case in New York, frankly, should have never been brought. And if his name was not Donald Trump and if he wasn't running for president, I'm the former AG in New York, I'm telling you that case would have never been brought. And that's what is offensive to people. And it should be, because if there's anything left, it's belief in the justice system.
President Trump already spoke in Washington, D.C. Now we're preparing for him to speak in Philadelphia.
We're going to Philly. We're having a big rally later on this evening.
People are just really, really excited.
Thousands and thousands of people in here in North Philadelphia.
Can you imagine at a Biden rally? I mean, they'd be snoozing.
You see the crowd that we have here in Philadelphia. We're not in rural Pennsylvania.
The tide has turned. The illegal immigrants are getting the money in this country right now. They're the ones who are going to be the new Americans. We need Trump. We need Trump.
I'm tired of my tax money going to these people who don't belong here.
Crime has gotten so bad.
They send all the money to these people that don't deserve it instead of paying our police to take care of us.
The Biden administration has just taken a hands-off approach.
The Democrats won't even come here.
Things were a lot cheaper when he was president. He's helped not just black people, white people, everybody.
Vote for Trump. He was the best thing for us.
President Trump has landed here in Pennsylvania.
We will make America safe again. We will make America free again. And we will make America great again.
I don't have any confidence. I don't think most Americans do, that President Trump or President Biden can deal with these new issues, the emerging issues like blockchain and AI. AI and blockchain are new industries. They actually have a tremendous promise to provide us the kind of growth and revenue that can get us out of this deficit crisis. But our solution to AI and blockchain has been to drive them out of the country, to overregulate. We need to regulate them. We need to make sure that AI serves the American public in actually keeping its government honest. We don't want it to become an instrument of government to control and enslave us. Elon Musk famously said that AI is going to steal our jobs and that it's going to kill us. And that very well could be our future. It also could provide tremendous prosperity and tremendous improvements in quality of life for the American people. But we need a president who's thinking about those issues now, who's planning for them, who's not driving blockchain abroad. You know, in the past 2 years, 1,200 new cryptocurrencies have registered in Switzerland. They have a net worth of about $390 billion, collective net worth. Well, they should be starting here. We drove them to Switzerland. We've driven them to Singapore. We're driving them to China, to the rest of the world, and blockchain is the future. We need to keep it here like we kept Silicon Valley here. And I don't think President Trump or President Biden is even thinking about this stuff.
I know that RFK Jr. wants to try and get onto the stage on Thursday, and I'd love to have him, frankly, because I don't think he's much of a debater, and he's got some very liberal, radical left ideas. But I would love to have him, but you have to get certain numbers. That was the criteria, and he's way below those numbers. He's not coming close. So I hope to see him up there someday, but it looks to me like he's not going to qualify on many fronts. But he'll be there, and you know, they say he hurts Biden more than he hurts me. I don't know if that's true or not, but they say he hurts Biden because he's a serious left person. And you know what? If he is, that's good. I don't really care. I'm going to Cleveland. It looks like we're doing great in Ohio. We're doing great in just about every state we're in. Every poll number that's coming in is looking good. We're leading just about every poll on a national basis, also on a swing state basis. And I look forward to Thursday night. It'll be great. And again, I saw RFK Jr., nice guy. I hope he can debate, because I really think it would be a good thing to have him up there. I'd love to have him up there, but you have to do better than 6 or 7 points, like by about triple. And maybe someday he'll be there, but I sort of doubt it. Thank you.
It appears that both President Trump and President Biden are afraid to debate me, and their campaigns are colluding with CNN to keep me off the debating stage. Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm running as an independent candidate for President of the United States. The two other candidates don't agree on much, but they do agree about excluding me from that stage. That's why the Washington Post reported on May 17th that, quote, Biden's advisors quickly let it be known that they had not agreed to any terms that could include Kennedy. The Post also reported that, quote, one of the CNN producers on a Wednesday call with Trump aides had explained at the time that, quote, RFK Jr. will not be on the stage, end quote. While I'm flattered to know that President Biden and President Trump are frightened by the prospect of debating me, shutting me out of that debate makes a mockery of democracy. It's not just about trying to silence me as a candidate. It's also an attempt to stifle the ideas that I represent that both of these candidates would rather not talk about. For example, the bloated $34 trillion national debt, which they both contributed to, the forever wars that they both support, the chronic disease epidemic that is debilitating our children and over which they presided, the toxic polarization in our country, which is tearing us apart and which both of them feed upon and profit from, and the corruption of the federal agencies, which neither of them knows how to stop, even if they wanted to. President Biden and President Trump know I'll come in with tough questions, which neither of them want to answer. And that's why they want to avoid debating me. Whether or not they succeed, I'm going to keep talking about these issues and making them visible to the American people, and I'm never going to back down. What I need right now is a megaphone to broadcast these ideas on and off the debating stage, and I need your support to get that megaphone. Please donate to my campaign as much as you can today. Let's show the Democrat-Republican duopoly that we're not going to be silenced. The election's only months away, so please donate now.
And welcome to Hannity and Tonight. Stay tuned. By the way, a major announcement from our friend, our colleague, Gianno Caldwell. But first, let's jump right in. The 2024 election is only 136 days away. Early voting in Pennsylvania, that begins in 87 days, rolls out to other states thereafter. And the very first presidential debate is less than 1 week away. In just 6 days, two left-wing, self-proclaimed journalists who are really just liberal talk show hosts from fake news CNN, they will moderate Thursday's debate. Now, needless to say, the odds are stacked against Donald Trump. The 45th president recently said he thinks there is a 10% chance that CNN will be fair. Our prediction is the odds are actually much lower. Now, for starters, I think we can expect the first half of the CNN presidential debate to be dedicated to questions about January 6th and abortion, the left's fear-mongering about Trump's desire for political retribution, democracy in peril. Critical topics: inflation, Biden inflation, crimes committed by Joe Biden's unvetted illegal immigrants from 180-plus countries, including those countries with terror ties and our top geopolitical foes. Is that going to come up? We also expect that fake news CNN will put their one-sided questions, they're going to put them on the screen and probably leave them there with provocative, biased language that will be framed to hurt Donald Trump and, frankly, make it easier for Joe Biden. For example, Donald Trump asked why he supported insurrection. Oh, that's not opinionated? This will be the most obvious bias on display, meaning what they put on the screen, how they frame the question, and how they put it on the screen. Now, they just, mark my words here. It will be framed in a way to help Biden and hurt Trump. That's what I believe will happen. I hope they prove me wrong. And how about Vice President Harris's tweet, by the way, if we're going to talk about these topics, from June of 2020, the one supporting a bail fund for the rioters in the summer of 2020? Will that even come up? What about Democrats denying past elections? Democratic Party election deniers. You might recall some of this. Take a look.
Folks, you know it, I know it, they know it. We won that election.
Troubling evidence of the fact that not every vote was being counted.
There are still legitimate concerns over the integrity of our elections and of ensuring the principle of one person, one vote.
You can run the best campaign You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
The president is an illegitimate racist.
Russian attempt to have the election, and frankly, the FBI is weighing in on the election. I think makes his election illegitimate.
It's illegitimate, and my biggest fear is that he's going to do it again with the help of Vlad, his best pal, and we're going to be stuck for 6 more years with this guy, and that is terrifying. It's terrifying.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
I believe was a stolen election. And I'm not saying they stole it from me. They stole it from the voters of Georgia.
Now, I also predict the moderators will play a huge role in the debate, cutting off Donald Trump. Now, they will perform the so-called fact checks. Are they going to do that in real time while giving Joe Biden a free pass on everything? God forbid they ever decide to allow Donald Trump to finish his 2-minute or 1-minute thought uninterrupted before they mute his microphone. God forbid they let viewers in the country decide for themselves. I actually do hope that I'm wrong, and maybe I will be. But it's, a pretty safe bet that it's all but certain that this debate will be 3-on-1. Don't take my word for it. We report, you decide. Let's take a closer look, shall we, at the two moderators. Let's begin with Jake Tapper, or as I often affectionately refer to him as Fake Jake, for his biased coverage. Now, this left-wing nightmare got his career started as a press secretary for a Pennsylvania Democrat. He then worked for a D.C. public relations firm and a gun control group named Handgun Control, Inc. Tapper even had a stint at the far-left publication Salon.com before making his way to fake news CNN to play the role of, quote, journalist. Now, currently, Tapper is at the center of an ongoing defamation suit. He's accused of smearing a contractor who was helping evacuate Americans out of Afghanistan during Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal. We're going to keep an eye on that suit. But clearly, Fake Jake, he is a left-wing talk show host. He doesn't like Donald Trump. We have the tape, and we'll play it in just a moment. His colleague Dana Bash, frankly, just as bad. She is a career CNN employee working at the fake news network for over 30 years. Her low-rated daytime show, Inside Politics, typically utilizes large panels of liberals who go round and round in a circle, bashing Trump and other Republicans, and then heaping praise on Biden and Democrats. And, of course, Dana is a big supporter of the left's favorite political new tactic, where very real, unedited videos showing Joe Biden's mental and physical decline are falsely referred to as cheap fake videos. Take a look.
A lot of memes and what the White House is calling cheap fakes, which means that there are videos that are being put out on social media and then amplified on conservative media that in some cases are just not right, and in other cases are highly, highly misleading of President Biden. It's the question that I started this conversation with, is how much to talk about it versus how much to just kind of ignore it. And we're trying to kind of do both here.
Now, it's simple. Anybody that's parroting a Democratic Party talking point as fact, they shouldn't be allowed to moderate a presidential debate unless they're honest with both sides and say, I'm a liberal, I have a liberal point of view. Now, Dana, the videos are real. They're unedited. Now, of course, both Dana Bash and Fake Jake Tapper are more than happy to spread this kind of left-wing garbage under the guise of journalism and truth. For them, it's a means to an end. They probably see it as a service to the country to prevent Donald Trump from winning again. And, of course, like many in the media, they want to be loved by their left-wing media colleagues. By the way, something I can promise you I never want in my life. I've never even been to a White House Correspondents' Dinner in all the years I've been on the air, and I'm proud of the fact. I don't think they like me, and I don't really like them too much either. Anyway, they can hide their utter contempt for all things Donald Trump. You think they'll be able to do that? I don't think so, but let's let you decide.
Insults, invective, and outright lies. That's what we heard from Donald Trump in Iowa this weekend.
We're not carrying his remarks live because, frankly, he says a lot of things that are not true and sometimes potentially dangerous.
most important question now is the culpability of the President of the United States and the fact that he went to that rally and called for and incited violence.
A fitting end to the Trump presidency, a speech full of puffery and lies. Although, of course, with this president, it always could have been worse.
Long national nightmare over. Is that opinion, or do they really believe that's journalism? Does anybody really expect this Democratic duo to be fair and unbiased? Now, Tapper even once suggested that Trump was unhealthy and heavy and made fun of his affinity for McDonald's. I like McDonald's. Anyway, he also retweeted a post from George Conway calling Trump, quote, 100% insane. In 2020, Dana Bash proclaiming that a Trump loss in Arizona would be John McCain's last laugh. More recently, Bash saying, quote, unfortunately for America, the Supreme Court was correct to keep Trump on the ballot. Unfortunately for America? Is that opinion, Dana, or are you a journalist? Now, there's no problem, by the way, if Fake Jake and Dana Bash want to host far-left talk shows on fake news CNN. Moderating a presidential debate, claiming to be a journalist, that's a different story. You know, it has to be some kind of bad joke. They need to own who they are. They're liberal talk show hosts. In reality, it's just one part of the Democratic Party's strategy to work with state-run media and the mob to prop up their frail candidate. Oh, you're going to love this. Our old friend James Carville. He's now calling on the White House to get everyone in the media on the same page with some kind of Soviet-style enforcement mechanism. James, you're scaring me. Take a look.
And this is where I fault the White House. The president needs to give a speech, and in 15 minutes, and they poll, and they know. I mean, don't kid yourself. They know exactly. Tell us what negative to accentuate. And then you can have some kind of enforcement mechanism. But what is, hopefully we get this in a debate that there's a coherent line of attack coming out of Biden against Trump, so we could all pick it up.
Now, that would be insane, and that's how insane the left is becoming. Now, here's their message in a nutshell. Democracy's in peril if you vote for anyone but Joe Biden. We saw in recent weeks, in the last week and a half, Maddow so worried that Trump is going to put her in a camp. Day camp, I don't know, sleepover camp, I don't know what she's talking about. AOC thinks she's going to get arrested. Joyless Behar, she thinks Trump's going to cancel The View. Oh, the horror. The fear-mongering, they've all jumped the shark. And remember, this is from the same party that says democracy will be over unless you give them total control over everything. The same party that tells you not to believe real videos showing Joe Biden's real cognitive decline. The same party that works hard to censor real stories that hurt them politically. The laptop. The same party that uses lawfare as a political weapon, and they're fine with it. You know, these are the people who value and cherish democracy? Really?
It is a revolutionary thing to go from 2 to 3. In Christianity, there is the Trinity, or the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. You and me and the Spirit between us makes 3. 3 is a powerful shift in perspective. The third eye, the Celtic knot, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, birth, life, and death. The triangle and the traffic light. You have only 2, there will be accidents. 2 is a black and white world, but 3 brings in all the colors. And America is about to make that revolutionary shift from 2 to 3. 2-3.
Some positive change needs to happen, and it's going to happen.
When was the last time you were into politics? It's like, I haven't experienced that in forever.
There is a rising tide of independent voters sweeping the nation.
Right now, more than any time in history, there are more independents in America than those that claim to be either Democrat or Republican.
All has to do with allowing this country to create a new
cultural identity, and all we have to do is stand together.
So to me, American Independent is really about that free thinker.
Being as true to myself as I can be.
Very human.
Hard worker. This is the little man fighting giants.
The warrior spirit rather than a soldier who just takes orders.
It's that person that's an individual, that knows their worth, that knows their values, and really is not afraid to speak those values.
Honest,
true,
fierce warriors.
The American Independent senses that we're ready as a country for something new.
Have something different for myself and my kids.
People are ready for change. That their ability to choose their leaders have been so pigeonholed by the spirit of greed.
That's why, things have stayed the same.
Red. Blue. Blue, blue, blue.
Red.
Blue.
Red.
Blue.
Red, red.
Yellow.
There is this moment, this crack in the shell.
The political system is broken.
But what if it's not broken? What if it's working exactly how it was designed to work? One wing or the other of the same bird?
What do you say to voters who are upset that those are the two choices? Biden versus Trump.
Get over yourself. Those are the two choices.
Even if you like the third-party candidate better, they'll basically just say, but if you vote for them, then the person you don't want's going to get in.
But what's really going on is corporate oligarchy versus the rest of us.
When it's us versus them, it's we the people who get hurt.
They use fear and they scare people into thinking that they really don't have a choice, when we do.
The power of 3 breaks the polarization of 2. So yeah, yellow is needed.
For Americans not to feel that they have to vote out of fear, that they feel that they can vote out of hope.
Change can happen.
It's about time.
At this moment, an independent coalition winning elections is a non-violent, profoundly unifying pathway.
And we can step out of the paradigm that has kept us limited for all these years.
80 years ago, we ended World War II. 80 years before that, the Civil War ended in Union. And 80 years before that, the United States became an independent nation. Now, we are in a great turning, and if red and blue are the only colors you have, you can create. But never a sunset, never a forest or the fall leaf. If you are attempting to paint the dawn of a new age, you will need yellow, the third primary color.
You cast out a pebble and it creates this ripple, and the ripple is the change that changes the world.
Yeah, power to the people! Enough of us have a belief that that's possible, that it's happening.
Truth A, you have truth B, and there's the real truth somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, think outside of red and blue. Think yellow.
Sign the petition. Let's get the debate.
Debate is the way you stir the soul of democracy.
You know you all want to see it.
Go to timetodebate.com and sign the petition. Let your independent voice be heard. Thank you.
American Values 2024 is responsible for the contents of this advertisement.
Make sure he gets a special sandwich for himself. Aww. Yeah, I'm going to do something. Come here. You're going to hit pay dirt. You know what? Watch. Look at him, huh? My phone? Okay, hold it for now. You know what that is? Andrew Jackson. All right, dude. I'm going to time for you. We're going to make it value. We're going to add some value. We never have that before with your memorabilia. Look at this. Me and him talking. Hold this.
All right, Timmy.
Look at this guy now. Come in. We just added a little value. Take a picture, man. We love this kid. I like that kid. Timmy McConnell. So if your parents don't want you, I'll take you.
Yeah, baby.
He's a good boy.
Thank you,
Mr. President. What a guy he is. Thank you, Mr. President.
Wow.
Thank you very much, everybody, and hello, Philadelphia. I went to school in Philadelphia, must say. I like it. And we won it twice, in actuality. And we won it all the times in the primaries. We had great success here. We're going to have the biggest year we ever had. This is going to be a big one. And hello also to this great place. I love this place. You know, I've gone to a couple of games. You used to have good teams. You still have good teams here? I don't know. A little bit. Had a great coach, actually. Hello, Pennsylvania. It's good to be with you. Good to be with you. I'm thrilled to be back in the birthplace of American freedom with thousands and thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots, which is what you are. With your help, 5 months from now, we're going to win this Commonwealth. We're going to evict crooked Joe Biden from the White House. And we are going to make America great again. Less than 4 years ago, our border was secure. Inflation was nowhere to be seen. The world was at peace. They respected your country. And America was strong like never before. All because you finally had a president who put America first. I put America first. Now under crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, the world is in flames. Our border is overrun, inflation is raging, crime is out of control. Europe is in chaos, the Middle East is exploding, Iran is emboldened. China is on the march, and this horrible, horrible president is dragging us toward World War III. We're going to be in World War III soon. I see every movie he's making. Remember, Trump was right about everything. You see the cap? Trump was right. We're racing a clock. We're racing a clock. We'll be in World War III with this guy. That's why this November, the people of Pennsylvania are going to tell crooked Joe Biden, you're fired, get out, you're fired. Few communities have suffered more under the Biden regime than Philadelphia. Under crooked Joe, the city of brotherly love is being ravaged by bloodshed and crime. 2 weeks ago, 9 people were shot in a single weekend, including 3 teenagers so seriously hurt. Murders in Philadelphia reached their highest level in 6 decades. Retail theft in Philly, I spend so much time here, is up 135% since I left office. The convenience stores are closing down left and right. The pharmacies have to lock up. The soap, you want to buy a little bar of soap? You got to go through a big deal. Open up the glass, open up the steel. You can't keep a bar of soap. People walk in, they just take it. You can't buy toothpaste. You can't buy a toothbrush. You want a toothbrush, it takes you 45 minutes. Meanwhile, the schools are ranked 4th from the bottom in the entire nation, and crooked Joe has no plan to improve them, none whatsoever. By the way, we're moving the Department of Education back to the states, and we're going to do it quickly. And you know, some of our states are going to do a fantastic job with running education. If you think about it, we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, and we're at the bottom of every list. So, as I used to say about a group that likes me very much, what the hell do you have to lose, right? We might as well do it. And we'll be able to cut education in half and get much better education. In some of the states, I could name them right now, will have the best education anywhere in the world. Some won't do as well. There are a couple of states like, I would say Gavin Newsom will not do well. Under the Trump administration, we're going to bring law and order and safety back to our streets. We are going to bring success back to our schools. We're going to bring prosperity back to our forgotten communities, and we are going to liberate our once great cities and make Philadelphia better and more beautiful than ever before. But saving this once incredible place begins with stopping the killing and the crime that's setting records every single week. Unbelievably, crooked Joe Biden is going around trying to claim that crime is down. He says crime is down. Crime is so much up. First of all, we have a new form of crime. It's called the Biden migrant crime, right? Biden migrant. And all these millions of people that have come in here, they're just getting warmed up because, you know, they wanted to feel it out. They didn't know what the words politically correct mean because in their country, if they did what they do over here, they'd be shot and killed instantly. They can't believe what's happening over here. So it's only going to get worse. It's going to get worse and worse right up to the election. And after the election and January 20th, it's going to get real good. It's going to get real good. Going to go fast. We're going to give immunity to our police, so if they arrest somebody or if they speak a little bit harshly, they won't be discarded, they won't be destroyed, they won't be thrown in jail because they raised their voice to a criminal. They won't lose their family, they won't lose their home, they won't lose their pension. But the FBI crime statistics Biden is pushing are fake. They're fake. Just like everything else in this administration. Now he's even saying that all his mishaps were fake. They say the fake news covered him in a fake manner. That's a lot of fake news. That's a lot of fake news back there. All we want them to do is be honest, because they're all going out of business. Nobody believes them anymore. And it didn't help when they went along with the Biden scam. What is he called? What is he called? Do you know what he calls it? So they get him in about 9 different positions. I mean, even normal positions, although I assume he's been in some very bad ones. But they get him in all these horrible, compromising posts. And then they say, it really wasn't that way. It was total. Then everybody sends in, they all have cameras. See, every one of you has a camera. If I blow it up here, though, they take a perfect, brilliant, beautiful statement that I make. I go for 2 hours without teleprompters. And if I say one word slightly out, they say, he's cognitively impaired. Whereas Biden can run into walls. He can fall off the stage. He can fall up the stairs. He falls up. He can turn around. Listen to this. From 20,000 feet, a paratrooper is landing right in front of him. Everybody, all the foreign leaders, they're watching. And he turns around to look at a tree. Right? No. And then they say it was fake. He was fine. And then the press goes along with it. They go along with it. They say, isn't it terrible the way they cover him? No, he's terrible. The worst president in history by far. And we have to get him out, or this country is not going to survive another year. According to the much better national crime victimization survey, there has actually been a 43% increase in violent crime since I left office, including 58% increase in rapes, an 89% increase in aggravated assaults, and a 56% increase in robberies. Other than that, I think we're doing quite well, don't you? But with your vote, Joe Biden's wave of bedlam and death and terror will begin to recede the moment I take the oath of office, January 20th. First, I will stand with the heroes of law enforcement We will give our police officers the respect and protection, resources and support that they need to drive down your crime to zero. Second, we will surge federal law enforcement resources to the places that need them most. There are certain places, like places that I know very well here, that are just absolutely out of control. I mean, if you walk down certain streets here, you have a 50-50 chance of not ever seeing your home again. That's not too good. Instead of throwing Christians in jail, as Biden has done, we are going to crack down on the gangs, the drug dealers, human traffickers, and criminal cartels. Third, we're going to stand up to the out-of-control, Soros-backed DAs like Philadelphia's despicable Marxist prosecutor, Larry Krasner. How did he get in? Krasner has the blood of countless men, women, children on his hands, including thousands of African-American citizens, because he refuses to prosecute people. They don't refuse to prosecute me. I got more prosecutions than any human being. I've got more than the great Alphonse Capone. You ever hear of Scarface? Oh, my parents are looking down. How did this happen to my son? You know how it happened? I won an election that I wasn't supposed to win. I then did better the second time by a lot. We did much better, you know, for those of you in the fake news, we did much better the second time than we did the first, like not even a contest. In fact, we got the most votes for a sitting president in the history of our country. And then we were told, oh, but you just missed it. You just lost. No, we can't let this happen. And I'll tell you what, I have never seen, and we had a great 2016, we had an even better 2020. There has never been enthusiasm like I'm seeing right now. There's never been. Never been. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Isn't that great? You know, they've got the best seat in the house. Because if there's a star in the crowd, you know, the cameras on them, like the whole thing. They maybe only can see the back of my head. But you know what? The cameras on them, you think you have the best seats. If there's a star in the group, they will be found by the fake news. But my administration will aggressively defend the right of every American to live in safety and in peace. We're going to have a safe country again. We're going to have a safe country again. For that same reason, we will end Biden migrant crime. New category, it's a vicious crime. I told Dana White of UFC, I said, here's what we're going to do. You know, these are tough cookies coming into our country, coming with prisons and mental institutions. I said to Dana White, UFC, he's got a big fight going on right now. He's a good friend of mine. You know what he said the other day? They said, who's the toughest person you've ever met? He said, definitely Donald Trump. He said, Donald Trump. How about that? But I said, Dana, I have an idea for you to make a lot of money. You're going to go and start a new migrant fight league. Migrants, only migrants. And then at the end of the year, the champion migrant is going to fight your champion. And I hate to tell you, Dana, I think the migrant might win. That's how tough they are. This is not a normal situation. This is not, oh, isn't it wonderful, these wonderful people. These people are drug dealers, gang members, killers in so many different ways. No. And we probably have 18 million. We'll have 20 million by the time we get this guy out of there. But we got to get him out fast. We got even bigger problems. We got to get him out fast. The biggest problem is what he's saying to Russia, China, to Kim Jong-un, North Korea. What he's saying to these countries, they're laughing at us. They can't believe this has happened to America. On day one, I will seal the border, stop the invasion, and send Joe Biden's illegal aliens the hell back home. Day after day, week after week, Joe Biden is releasing illegal criminals into our communities to rape, pillage, plunder, and to kill. And by the way, here's the only thing. He doesn't even have a clue, in my opinion. These are young, smart people that happen to be fascists and communists that surround. They surround him in the Oval Office, the beautiful Resolute desk. It's been soiled. That gorgeous Resolute desk. What they're doing to our country, they're destroying our country. Just this week, a 12-year-old girl in Houston, Jocelyn Nungari, was tied up, stripped, and strangled to death after walking to a 7-Eleven, her body dumped near the side of the road in a shallow creek. Charged with Jocelyn's heinous murder are 2 illegal alien savages that Joe Biden recently set loose into our country. They came across our border, claiming they feared for their lives in Venezuela. They feared for their lives in Venezuela. You know, in Venezuela, crime is down 72% because they've taken their criminals, their drug dealers, and most of the people in their jails, and they've brought them to the United States of America. So they were afraid for their lives, and think of it, they couldn't stand it. They were so afraid. I'm so afraid, Venezuela. But they waited only weeks before murdering this precious, young, beautiful girl. One of them was here for 21 days before the murder took place. Last week in New York, another illegal alien who Joe Biden set loose into our country approached 2 13-year-old children with a machete in broad daylight, and like a scene from a horror movie, he forced them into the woods, tied them together by their wrists, and raped the young girl at a park in Queens, a park that I grew up right next to, while filming it on camera. He put it on camera. He thought it was great. You know, I used to go to that park. I'd ride my bicycle like a kid. I was a kid too. Can you believe it? I'd ride my bicycle to the park. My mother loved me, but she'd say, oh, good, now be home at a certain time, you know. I'd ride there. This went on for years. There was never any thought of anything happening. Now, if you go to a park near your home, you have a very good chance of never seeing your child again. This is not living in a country that we grew up in, and we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to stand for it. We're going to take our country back. We're going to take our country back. In Iowa this week, another illegal immigrant released by Joe Biden pled guilty to sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl. And last week, yet another Biden migrant was arrested for the rape and murder of Rachel Morin. I just spoke to her mother, Patricia, Patty, as they say, but Patricia. Rachel was a 37-year-old Maryland mother of 5 whom he attacked while she was out for a run. She wanted to stay in good shape, and she ends up getting killed. Police believe that the animal responsible for Rachel's killing first murdered another young woman in El Salvador. Then he fled across Joe Biden's wide open border. Wide open, come on in, into the United States. You know, we had the safest border in the history of our country. Now we have the unsafest border in the history of the world. After which he savagely attacked a 9-year-old girl and her mother in a home in Los Angeles before killing Rachel. And a lot of Rachel's family is here. I have to say that they're incredible people. And we're deeply grateful for the brother and sister of Rachel, Michael Morin, Aaron Morin Lehman. Would you stand up, please? Please, wherever you may be. They've gone through hell. I've watched them on television. I've watched you on television, and it is a tough deal. People say time. I don't know about time. I don't know if that's the answer. Thank you very much. Michael and Aaron, we grieve Rachel's loss. We pray that God will ease your pain, and we resolved to secure our border so this will never happen again. But you know it's going to happen again because we have an incompetent man. He's an incompetent, and he's happens to be the president. You know, all he has to do is say, close the border. He doesn't need Congress. I need Congress. I didn't have Congress. I closed the border. We had the safest border. All he has to do is say, close the border. And it's closed. That's all you have to say. He doesn't need anything from Congress. It's just unlikely that a thing like that would have happened. Thank you for being with us. Yeah. That's when I first, we built hundreds of miles of wall. We got Mexico to give us thousands and thousands of soldiers. And we had a great border even while we were building it. And then we were going to add 200 miles of wall. And we had a rigged election take place. And what happened is when I left, all hell broke loose. And they didn't want to finish the wall. They didn't want to put up the additional wall we built. And it was all built to the highest specs of Border Patrol and ICE. And they're incredible people, by the way, Border Patrol and ICE. And instead of putting it up, which would have taken 3 weeks, they decided to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar. And the rest is history. When I return to the White House, we will stop the plunder, rape, slaughter, and destruction of our American suburbs, cities, and towns. That's what's happening, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. Worse and worse and worse by the day. We will shut down deadly sanctuary cities. I will shift massive portions of federal law enforcement to immigration enforcement. And on day one, we will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. We have no choice. We have no choice. You know who had the largest? General Dwight D. Eisenhower when he was president. Good general, good president. Very much responsible for the interstate highway system. But he was tremendous on not wanting people to illegally flow into our country. He had the strongest deportation program. Ours will unfortunately have to be much stronger than his because he didn't have 20 million people walk in. And these are people out of the jails and out of the mental institutions. He didn't have that. He had people walk in, but they weren't the people that we're getting. And you know what? I know every one of the presidents over there. Presidents, I call them presidents, dictators, kings, queens. I know every one of them. They come from all over the world, by the way. I would do the same thing as them. They're emptying their jails and they're emptying their mental institutions. I would have done it faster than them because actually they have some people left. They're dumping them in. We're like a dumping ground for the rest of the world. And it's going to stop on January 20th at a level that you haven't seen before. It's going to stop. I don't know if they have it. We have a card. We have a card that shows, a graph that shows, I don't even know if my guys are going to be able to find it because I didn't think I'd put it up. There it is. That's called efficiency. I didn't think they'd get that. Thank you, fellas. You're getting better. They're getting better after doing this for a few years, right? So if you look at that arrow on the bottom, the red arrow on the bottom, that is the week that I left office. That was the lowest level of illegal immigration in the history of our country, recorded history. Okay? And then Crooked Joe Biden came to office. Crooked as a $3 bill. I used to say $2 bill, but they make $2 bills, right? He's crooked as a $3 bill. He came to office right there. And there was an explosion of illegal immigration. By the way, drugs and human trafficking, too. And human trafficking is mostly in women, I hate to say. You think of it as an ancient thing, but you know what made it almost as big as the drug dealing stuff? You know what it was? The internet. It's made it massive. Human trafficking in women. And there's more of it going on right now than any time in the history of the world. And it's taken place during this horrible, pathetic president's time in office. So there it is, and that's done by the Border Patrol. That's not even done by Trump. That looks like it's done by Trump, right? That's done by the Border Patrol. That was the lowest point, that arrow. I'm very proud of that. And that supersedes a couple of things. You know what? That was in the ratings book. Because last night, and they will never tell you this because they're fake news, but last night, Rasmussen, which is, in my opinion, the most respected poll out there. Now, of course, if we get a bad one, I'll take that back. If I had a bad poll, if they come out with a bad poll in a month from now, I'll say Rasmussen is terrible. But Rasmussen, no, it is a highly respected pollster, and they came out with a poll last night that Trump is 10 points up. Okay. The fake news will not report it. The fake news will not. But they do report that we're leading in every single swing state. We're leading in Pennsylvania by a lot. No, we're doing good. Good-looking man. Good. Thank you. I like the hat. Thank you very much. No, we're doing good. You know, we have some people here. Where are those people? Look at those. See those beautiful women up there? I don't know what the hell their husbands are. Look at that. They come from a place called, nobody's ever heard of this, North Carolina, right? Which we won both times and won by a lot. And in fact, we did so good, we took Michael Whatley, the head of the Republican Party in North Carolina, we put him in charge. This is their 118th rally. And I don't know what the hell is happening with their husband. I've never figured it. They're all married. They're all happily, I think, married. Are you happily married? Look at this. They come way over 100 times. And we also have front row Joes here. Where the hell is? Look at them, front row. And they come in, and they have been. They've been here 201 times. I can't believe I did that many. How about me? Did I do that many? I did that many. So, thank you, front row. And thank you very much. It's nice, and you look great. You look great. Are we going to win? We don't have a choice. So we got this poll last night from Rasmussen, and it was they also did it like with Kennedy and with the other ones in there. Cornel West. He's one of my favorite candidates, Cornel West. And I like her also, Jill Stein. I like her very much. You know why? She takes 100% from them. He takes 100%. Kennedy's probably 50-50, but he's a fake. He's a fake. He's a total fake. You don't want to. He's more liberal than Joe Biden and all of these communists that work for him. Kennedy's more liberal than all of them. He wants to be in the debate, but he's got bad numbers. You can't do that, right? I'd like to have him in the debate, actually. I'd love to have him in the debate, but he's got bad numbers, very bad numbers. I don't think he's going to ever make it. But Joe Biden's open border has also been a disaster for our great African-American and Hispanic-American population. So what's happening when millions of people flow over? The people that are most hurt are, number one, the African-Americans in this country. Number two, the Hispanic. Have they taken your job yet, sirs? They better not. I don't think they're going to get your job. I'll fight for you. They're not getting your job. Nobody's getting his job. But I will tell you, they're taking African-American jobs and Hispanic-American jobs. You know who else they're really affecting? The unions. And I have to tell you, we have a lot of Teamsters here. Do we have a lot of Teamsters? We have Teamsters, and I think we're doing 89% or something with the Teamsters. And they have a great leader. I hope Sean is listening right now. But we have a shot at even getting it from the top. I think we have a shot. But we have great Teamsters. They worked for me a lot in New York because they did the concrete trucks and other things, and they were incredible. But the unions are being incredibly impacted by all of these millions of people pouring into our country. So But the African American population is being destroyed by Joe Biden. Remember his statement, super predator. Remember? Just don't forget the super predator statement. This guy's the biggest phony on earth. Virtually all of the net jobs created under Biden have gone to migrants. You know, almost 100% of the jobs created by Crooked Joe. What's better, Crooked Joe or Sleepy Joe? Ready? Wait, free poll. Free poll. This is a free. You know, you do a poll, they say that'll cost $1 million. They go out and they interview about 200 people. That'll be $1 million, right? Ready? We'll go Crooked Joe first, Sleepy Joe second. Crooked Joe first, ready? Okay. Who likes Crooked Joe the best? Who likes Sleepy Joe the best? Crooked Joe? Sleepy Joe? Whoa! You know, that's the first time that Sleepy Joe has ever beaten Crooked Joe. It's the first. So tonight, we'll refer to him as Sleepy Joe. Because right now, as you know, it's been reported that right now Crooked Joe's gone to a log cabin to study, prepare. No, he didn't do, he's sleeping now. Because they want to get him good and strong, so a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the ass, and they want to strengthen him up. So he comes out, he'll come out, I say he'll come out all jacked up, right? All jacked up. Now, will anybody be watching the debate on Thursday night? I'm shocked. No, I'm shocked. But they've taken so much fun out of it. There's no audience. They actually wanted us to sit down. I said, look, I really want to do this thing. You know, what happened is they gave me something that couldn't be accepted. They gave me an offer I couldn't accept, and I said, I'll do it. Number one, it was CNN fake news, right? Who hates Trump. Then it was Fake Tapper, who really hates Trump. And Dana Bash. Then it was, you know, it's Dana, it's not Dana, it's Dana. You know that, right? Right? It's Dana, right? Isn't it? It's either. Sherzika. Then they said, think of this, but no audience. It's like death. There's two us and two of them. It's like death. This could be the most boring, or it could be quite exciting. Who knows? You know, I already caught them. They had a presidential commission. You remember the time where they were turning off my mic and they weren't allowed to? And they had to apologize. You know, they apologized for it. Of course, that doesn't do any good. The debate's over, but we won the debate. We won just about all of those suckers. You know, we won them. How should I handle him? Should I be tough and nasty? Or should I be, she'd say, no, should I be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history? Or should I be nice and calm and let him speak? 50-50. Be tough. Be tough. So bad. So bad. But anyway, it'll be a good, I'm sure he'll be prepared. Whatever happened to all that cocaine that was missing a month ago from the White House? Whatever happened? Under the Trump administration, American workers will always come first. We will buy American, build American, and we will hire American. Biden wants. We're bringing it back. You know, the auto industry, United Auto, the auto workers are largely on my side. They have the worst union head in the country. This guy wants to make all electric cars, EVs, right? All of you. They don't go far. They cost too much. They're all made in China. Other than that, I think they're actually quite wonderful. But he's getting decimated by his union. He supported Sleepy Joe. He supported him. Sleepy Joe. See, just for this, because I'm going back to Crooked, I think it's more accurate. I like Crooked more. I think it's... In fact, I took it away from Crooked Hillary, so I don't want to give it back to her, because now I call her Beautiful Hillary. She's a beautiful woman. I said, that's the greatest day of her life when I took the branding off her. I no longer call her, so I can't give it back. But I'm going to go Sleepy Joe just for the rest of this particular this is a wild time in Philadelphia. Now, the fake news will say Trump is rambling. No, it's genius what I'm doing up here, but nobody understands. It's genius. And you know what? They know that too, but they don't admit it. You know, when I showed him not being able to get off the stage, right? And I imitate him sometimes. You know, he always goes, and then after he does that, he can never find the stairs. We've got about 7 stairs on every stage. Here we have, look, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this was built privately, so we have only 4. The ones built by the government, you have 7 or 8. So I made the mistake of imitating him. There was a wall behind me, and I just kept walking into the wall, because that's what happens. And I called up my wife. You heard this story. I called up my wife, and I said, baby, who could do this but me? I had 35,000 people. You know, I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. Wildwood, we love Wildwood. 107. We had 25,000 people. And that was a rainbow coalition. That was unbelievable. And there wasn't one bad word out of it. There wasn't a fight. It was like a love fest. It was the most beautiful day. Everybody came together. You know why? The people of our country are looking for hope. Whether they're white, brown, black, or anything else, they're looking for hope. They're tired of being called stupid people all over the world. 4 years ago, we were so respected, and now we're being laughed at. I took hundreds of billions of dollars away from China. One of these fakers up there said, he didn't take any money from China. Tariffs. I tariffed them for hundreds of billions of dollars. He said, the American people paid. No, China paid. And the American people didn't pay for it at all. They didn't pay for it. You know, they always find a reason. They're genius in a certain way, but they're evil genius, very bad genius. I'm nice genius, you know, I'm a nice genius. Joe Biden wants to be president for illegal aliens, but I will be the president for law-abiding Americans of every background, every walk of life, every race, religion, color, and creed. And I will tear up Joe Biden's new mass amnesty executive action on my first day back in office. So a couple of weeks ago, he signed this bull. I don't want to use bad language, you know? You know why, right? A man I like, Franklin Graham, son of the great Billy Graham. And I like Franklin so much, and he wrote me a letter, and he said, President, I love your speaking. Your ability to speak is incredible. Your storytelling is great. But it could be so much better if you didn't use foul language. And actually, he's wrong, you know, but I have been working so hard, and it's not that hard. The problem is, if you don't interject every once in a while, I'm only talking about 1 or 2 times during an entire speech. You know, these speeches go on for 2 hours. 1 or 2, Franklin, give me 1 or 2 words. And if you interject, if you don't get the emphasis, but it's okay. So far, I did one today, Faith and Freedom. And I was really good. I didn't interject. Could have been better if I used a couple of bad words. When I see people start to walk out, then we'll stop, okay? But I like them, so we're trying. So I'm not going to use the word bullshit. It's not. I refuse to use it. And it's not that bad a word. I will also take immediate action to restore prosperity to every part of our land. When I left office, inflation was practically nothing. During my term, we had gasoline down to $1.87 a gallon, and at some points, even less than that. And the 30-year mortgage rate was 2.7%. And then Joe Biden blew it to shreds. Biden's inflation, price hikes, and energy destruction have cost the average American family an astounding $28,000. $28,000. That's a lot of money. And with me, they actually made $16,000. That's a lot of money. You know, inflation is a disaster. It's a country buster. It's a total country buster. And when you look at the prices of eggs and bacon, it's gone up 100%, much more than that in some cases. And if people are making, she said, we can't eat anymore. You can't. Don't ever eat again. Even I won't buy bacon anymore. It's too expensive. I said, I'd love to have some lovely bacon, darling. And she said, no, I'm sorry, it's too expensive. The monthly cost of the typical mortgage has doubled under crooked Joe Biden, but it's actually gone up much more than that. So with me, it was around 2% interest. Now it's 10%, and you can't get the money. So when you can't get the money, that means it's not 10%, right? You know, that's... On day one of my new administration, we will throw out Bidenomics and replace it immediately with Maganomics. It was just announced. This is a big announcement. It was just announced that the budget deficit is now expected to be $2 trillion. $2 trillion. That's all of his Green New Scam stuff. You know, the Green New Scam, let's build a windmill on every corner. A windmill that doesn't work. Darling, I'd like to watch television. I'm sorry, the wind isn't blowing tonight. Making his brutal inflation much worse than anybody ever imagined. I believe it's the worst inflation the country's ever had. To stop Bidenflation, I will end Crooked Joe's wasteful spending and rapidly terminate the Green New Scam. The Green New Scam. You know what the Green New Scam is? No water in your faucets. You ever try buying a new home and you turn on, they have restrictors in there. You want to wash your hair? Or you want to wash your hands. You turn on the water and it goes drip, drip. The soap, you can't get it off your hand. So you keep it running for about 10 times longer. You're trying. The worst is your hair. I have this beautiful, luxuriant hair. And I put stuff on. And I put it in. Lather. I like lots of lather because I like it to come out extremely dry because it seems to be slightly thicker that way. And I lather up, and then you turn on this crazy shower, and the thing drip, drip. I just say, I'm going to be here for 45 minutes. What the? They put restrictors, and they put them on in places like here where there's so much water you don't know what to do with it. You know, it's called rain. It rains a lot in certain places. But no, their idea, you know, did you see the other day? They just put, I opened it up and they closed it again. I opened it, they closed it. Washing machines to wash your dishes. There's a problem. They don't want you to have any water. They want no water. And I was with Whirlpool, the head of Whirlpool. I helped save that company because they were being attacked by China and South Korea. And I put tariffs on those machines coming in. They were dumping thousands, hundreds of thousands of machines. And the company now is a tremendous success in Ohio because of Jim Jordan, actually. The great Jim Jordan. And I said, what else can I do for you? They say, sir, we're not allowed to use practically any water. I need more water. I said, I'm going to give it to you. That took me about 2 seconds. But in a washing machine, they give you no water. In the shower, you have no. In the sinks, the whole country is going crazy. They want you to have electric vehicles. They don't go far. They cost too much, and they're made in China. That's why Sean Fain, or whatever the hell his name is going to be out of a job soon because he approved it. He's the head of the United Auto Workers. That's his name, I think. Don't forget, I've done most of the speech without these stupid teleprompters, so. You think Biden could do that? I don't think so. I had a speech recently. I was in Ohio, and we had 45-mile-an-hour winds, and I get up to the stage, and we had a tremendous crowd, and we have a good Senate race. Bernie Bernie Moreno is going to win, I think. He's got a good chance of winning. But I went up for him, and I get up 45, 50 miles. I never saw wind like this in my life. If you had fake hair, don't run for politics. Just don't do it. It was blowing I've never seen. I even went up with a hat, and the hat disappeared too. Everything disappeared. But I woke up, and within about the first line, ladies and gentlemen of Ohio, whoa, and the things blew off the stage. I said, I am up here all by myself. I've lost my teleprompters. I've lost my hat. We got 50-mile-an-hour winds. People say we shouldn't even be here. But let's go. And I spoke for 2 hours, and Bernie Moreno then went out and won the primary in record fashion. So is that good? I said, you think Crooked Joe could do it? I don't think so. Sleepy Joe couldn't have done it. Sleepy Joe would go to sleep. But I will repeal every disastrous Biden regulation, cancel Crooked Joe's insane electric vehicle mandate, and we will, ready? Drill, baby, drill. Gonna get your energy way down. The Pennsylvania oil and gas industries will boom like never before. So what he did is prices started going. That's what caused inflation. He started cutting all the stuff that I did, so then he immediately put it back. So they're doing sort of similar numbers. He immediately put it back. But if they ever won, you're never going to see oil again. You're never going to see a car that goes more than a very short distance, okay? You're going to be all driving trucks if you drive a truck that's electric. You'll be stopping 6 times to 1 time, 6 to 1. I had the truckers in the other day. One of them said to me, big. I said, how many trucks do you have? Sir, I have 28,000. 28,000? These are the biggest truckers in the world, I think. But he said they want to make them use all electric trucks. I said, what's the problem with that? They don't go too far. They're too heavy. You know, one thing nobody knew, they're so heavy, 2.5 times heavier than diesel fuel, that if you make them all electric with the batteries, the heavy batteries, you'd have to build and rebuild. Every bridge in the country would have to be rebuilt. I said, did you tell that to the people in Washington? You know, sometimes you could tell something like really simple. Did you tell that to the people in Washington? Yes, sir. What did they say? We don't care. We want you to go all electric. They would have to stop 6 times from New York to Los Angeles. How many times do you have to stop with diesel? He said, we don't have to stop at all. We go from New York to Los Angeles. You talk about having problems with trucks and with deliveries. He said it's going to put us, he said, sir, all of my life, for 50 years, I've been building damn trucks and buying them. And every single year, they got better. They got more fuel efficient, they got stronger, they got bigger, they looked better. Then we started adding apartments to the cab. Some of those apartments, sir, you'd be proud to live in. I said, I don't know about that. I think so, maybe. Hey, I'd have no problem. You don't know the real Donald Trump. But he said every year, so it's such a great statement, right? Every single year they got better without fail. I said, who makes the best truck? He said, they all make good. I went through every company, all great. They were all very complimentary. He's a tough cookie, too. But he started with 1 truck, and now he has 28,000 trucks. I guess he's pretty good, right? I said, that's a lot of work, right? He said, I'll work my ass off, sir. But he said, and now they want to take it all away. Because I said, every year they got better. And if they do the electric truck, we're going to go back 80 years, not 60 years. You go back 80 years. It'll be a disaster for the country. I said, you've got to tell them that. He said, we tell them they couldn't care less. They don't even hear you. These people are sick. And it's Biden and it's the communists that surround the desk. I'm telling you, it's Biden and the communists. We will also work to lift up Black, Hispanic, and other communities in Philadelphia and all across the United States. By the way, I have the best polling numbers that any president has had. They said in 75 years, I think it's longer, with Black and with Hispanic voters. We have the best polling numbers. Beautiful. Proud of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, we have the best polling numbers. You know what? They're smart. They want jobs. They want safety. They don't want to lose their homes. Everyone said that with the Hispanic, you know, when we put up hundreds of miles of wall, you know, you couldn't get it from Congress because crazy Nancy Pelosi and all that put blocks on it. So I ended up taking it out of the military. I took it out of the military because I considered it an invasion. I said, this is an invasion of our country, and I built it through the military, and the military was great. The Army Corps of Engineers. I will support universal school choice, so big, it's such a big thing. I want every parent to have the right to send their child to the public, private, religious, or charter schools, or homeschool as an option. We will cut taxes for working families as part of our tax cuts that I've announced, and there will be no taxes on tips. No taxes on tips. The government spends, you know, Joe Biden, they increased the rules, they made it miserable. People that get some tips, they made their lives miserable. They have upped the standard, and the reporting is so horrible. Everything's horrible. No taxes on tips. Every time you leave a tip for the next 5 months, make sure to write on the receipt, vote Trump for no tax on tips. Okay? It's no wonder Joe Biden and his thugs are so desperate to stop us. They know that we are the only ones who can stop them. All of their persecution is only happening because I am running for president and leading in every single poll. The rig case in New York was not a legitimate indictment. It was a Biden indictment. He's the one that did it. This wasn't legitimate. Every single legal scholar, every one of them, you know them, I've repeated their names 100 times. But every one of them said, there's no case. This is crazy what they're doing. This was a Biden indictment. That's why when I went through that case, my poll numbers went up instead of down. That's never happened. Usually you do this, I will be leaving office, go home to my wife and my family, and I will fight for my name. That's what you normally do. I said the exact opposite. We will fight this scum that we have to beat. We will fight them and we will win. But it was all set up by Crooked Joe and his weaponized Department of Justice. But since the show trial in New York, that rigged trial, where again, the greatest legal scholars, Dershowitz, Jonathan Turley, right? Greg Jarrett, the great Mark Levin, all of them. Andy McCarthy, all of them. Great scholars, and then many more. Not one of them said this was a case, but I had a judge who was horrendous, who was radical. He was appointed by the Democrats. He was appointed by the Democrat machine. He didn't win a vote. Normally you have to win a vote. He was appointed. And I'm not allowed to talk about it because I have a gag order. Think of it. I'm running for president of the United States. I had a very successful presidency. Even the fake news says that mostly. I had a very successful presidency. I win the nomination in record time. You know, I don't know if you know, we won the nomination in the quickest period of time. I mean, I won the nomination like 3 months ago, right? Normally it would still be going on. And I have a gag order from an appointed New York City judge. I have a gag order. I'm not supposed to talk. Won't that be interesting? I get a question. What do you think about this or that? Sir, I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer that. I have a gag order. Can you imagine? The President of the United States, the nominee for President of the United States, somebody that had an unbelievably successful administration, which everybody, look at us. We got the biggest tax cuts in history, the biggest regulation cuts in history, rebuilt the military, started no wars, but we finished ISIS. We beat the hell out of them. Soleimani gone. Think of that. Think of what we did. The leader of ISIS gone. All gone. That's al-Baghdadi. Al-Baghdadi is gone. They're all gone. We had the safest country ever. Kim Jong-un liked Trump. He liked Trump. Got along with him good. That was going to be a nuclear war. He liked me. We had no problem. By the way, he's not happy right now. You're going to end up in a war if we don't get this thing done. It's going to happen soon. The area I'm most troubled by is the next 5 months, because really bad things could happen with this president. This president is a disaster for our country, and I'm very worried about the next 5 months. 5 months is a long time. You know what 5 months is? In this world, 5 months is an eternity. It's an eternity. The radical left Democrats rigged the presidential election in 2020, and we're not going to allow them to rig the presidential election in 2024. Not going to allow it. Every time the radical left Democrats, Marxists, communists, and fascists indict me, I consider it a great badge of honor. I'm being indicted for you. Never forget, our enemies want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. Never. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. And in the end, they're not after me, they're after you. I just happen to be standing in their way. So, you have a second very important function. You have to, if we win Pennsylvania, we win the presidency. And all I can tell you is you'll be happy. You'll have a great economy. You'll have low energy costs. You'll be drilling. You'll get all the way back. You're going to be at levels that you've never seen before, just like you were. They asked that question. Even the enemy said, I hope they don't compare the 4 years with Biden and the 4 years with Trump. But I do that now because they said that. People were happy. It's like 92% preferred my term than his term. What's good about his term? Not one thing good has happened during. What has happened? They had the worst catastrophe in history, the greatest embarrassment in the history of our country with Afghanistan. But you have to do something else. You have to elect a senator, because we can also take the Senate. And if we take the Senate, the presidency, we're going to take the House. I'm sure of that. And we have a man who's a warrior, a great military person, an incredible guy. And we have to elect him as the U.S. Senator from your state. And just so you know, Dave McCormick is a seventh-generation Pennsylvanian who grew up in Bloomsburg, went to West Point, did great there, and earned a Bronze Star for his service in the First Gulf War, which was a victory. Dave went on to an outstanding career in business, and now he's fighting for the people of this Commonwealth, and he loves this Commonwealth. I mean, he's really a high-quality person. I actually said, Dave, are you too high quality for this job? But I'd rather have that than the other. And honestly, you have a senator who's been there forever. His father was there forever. He doesn't do anything. I don't think I ever met him during my years in Washington. He doesn't do anything. I don't want to use the word he's a stiff, but he doesn't do anything. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody has any idea. And Dave McCormick is going to be an activist for you. We have so much. You have to protect your Second Amendment. You need help. Dave will vote to secure your borders, stand up to China, unleash incredible amounts of Pennsylvania energy. You're taking a lot of money, but they want to stop it. They want to have you never take out energy out of your beautiful ground. I call it liquid gold. And he wants to stop Bidenflation, and he wants to drain the swamp. Most importantly, Dave will defeat your atrocious radical left Senator Bob Casey. Bob Casey, look, I mean, he doesn't do anything. He's a stiff. He doesn't do anything. You ever have people like that? You meet them and they put you to sleep. You say, hello, how are you? And you fall asleep. That's Bob Casey. You fall asleep. Hello, Bob, how are you? I'm going to sleep, Bob. And Bob Casey votes for Sleepy Joe 98% of the time. 98. Bob Casey could have used his vote to stop Joe Biden's invasion of this country. Instead, he voted in favor of sanctuary cities. He voted against Kate's law. How do you vote against Kate's law? He voted to give illegal aliens taxpayer-funded benefits. He voted against the border wall. And he supports Joe Biden's bill to institute a minimum of 2 million illegal border crossers every year. He passed this thing. He signed this bill. It's the worst. It's worse than it is without it. It's crazy. And then he never did anything about it anyway, because he never does. Because Joe doesn't do anything that's good. Name one thing that he's done in 3.5 years that's good. Pennsylvania, you need to defeat open borders. Bob Casey, you have to get rid of your open borders, and Bob Casey will fight us all the way. Well, he doesn't fight, really. He doesn't really. It's not like, oh, gee, Bob Casey. He just goes like this. They have guys that fight. Well, they fight for crooked elections, let's face it. But you have to elect. Look, I know David McCormick. I know him through business. He's tough as hell, and he's good. He's what you need. And really a great military personality. David McCormick, please come up. You have my total support and my total endorsement, and you got to win. Dave McCormick, come on up, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that great introduction. Thank you all. I'll just say briefly, as a father of 6 daughters, it breaks my heart to hear about these young women that are raped and murdered by illegal migrants. Of Rachel's story, it's a heartbreaking thing. As a native son of Pennsylvania, it breaks my heart that 60% of Pennsylvanians are living paycheck to paycheck. Prices on the rise, 20%. As a combat veteran, it breaks my heart that we can't make our recruiting numbers, that our military is in decline, and that 22 veterans a day kill themselves. We need new leadership. We need new leadership. We need a new president in the White House that's going to get our country back on track. We need a new majority in the Senate that's going to be able to take our country in the right direction. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, David. And by the way, he's got a great wife who worked for me in the White House, and there was nobody smarter or better. So thank you, David. Very important. We're also pleased to be joined by warriors. One of the warriors is right in front of me, Congressman Dan Muser. Congressman, where is Dan? Where is Dan? Thank you. Great, Dan. Thank you very much. Does a great job. Congressional candidate, I hear he's doing really well. Aaron Bashir. Where is he? Where is he? Oh, good-looking guy. Thank you very much, Aaron. County Commissioner Tom DeBello. Tom, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Good job. We have a Philly rapper. He's going places. I'll tell you, he's got so much cash, he doesn't know what to do with it. OT7 Kwani. OT7, where are you? And I love that hat on you. That hat looks great. Thank you. Great honor to have you. And a very special thanks to the Teamsters Local 500 that helped build this beautiful rally. They were working day and night. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're also deeply honored to be joined by 8 family members of American service members who lost their lives in Biden's catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan. It wasn't the fact that he was withdrawing, because I was all set to get out. We had nobody lost in Afghanistan for 18 months. I spoke to Abdul, the leader of the Taliban. The press went crazy. Why would you speak to him? Because that's where the problem is. Just like Jesse James said, that's where the money is. When they say, why do you only rob banks? He said, that's where the money is. Well, the Taliban that's where the killing was. And I spoke to him, and after that, we didn't have one death of one soldier for 18 months. And then you had that horrible, stupid, incompetent withdrawal where they took the soldiers out first. But these families know firsthand the cost of Joe Biden's weakness and incompetence and failure. This family group, and I've gotten to know them. They thought I wouldn't spend a lot of time with them. They were at Bedminster, New Jersey, and they thought I was going to come in maybe for about 2 minutes, say hello, walk. And I thought of maybe had that in mind. I walked in, I saw them. We ended up spending 4 hours listening to music, right? Out at the terrace, looking up and talking about their loved ones. And they've taken it very, very hard, as anybody would. So I want to thank Darren, Stan Hoover, and Kelly Barnett, parents of Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Christy, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm looking over in the other area. He's looking down. They're all looking down right now, and they're proud of you. The parents and sisters and brothers, there are a lot of them here. Christy Shamblin and Cheryl Jules, mother-in-law and aunt of Sergeant Nicole Gee. Where are they? Nicole, that's good. Nicole G. Such a beautiful, you have the picture that you showed? It was so beautiful. So beautiful, let me see that. So beautiful, thank you. That this should have happened is disgraceful. Yep, that's it. Thank you. Say hello to everybody, please, all right? Herman Lopez and Alicia Lopez, parents of Corporal Hunter Lopez, a beautiful guy. Do you have that picture? Have it? Like a movie star, right? You look like a movie star. Thank you both very much. Steve Nicoe, and this is the father of Lance Corporal Kareem Nicoe, and that's it. You show that picture. He's looking down. He's proud of his pop. Thank you very much. No, that's another problem. You're right. That's another fentanyl. We were going to have it stopped. We had a deal with President Xi. He sends any more over, he has to give them the maximum death penalty, which was the death penalty. And then Biden never picked it up. Because you're right, fentanyl kills hundreds of thousands of people a year. Jim McCollum, father of Lance Corporal Riley McCollum. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Beautiful, beautiful families, beautiful children. They're not children, but they're children. They'll always be children to you, right? They were incredible people. I got to know many of them so well, so unnecessary. They lost 13. But we also had that nobody talks about, the 38 people that were so horribly wounded, legs and arms and face obliterated. And hundreds of people were killed that day that nobody talks about on both sides. And just so sad that it happened. It would have never happened if we were elected, if we were in office. First of all, we wouldn't have used that airport. We would have used Bagram, which is a big airport with tremendous 50-mile surroundings. And we would have taken the military out last, right? Not first. You don't take the military out first. Don't forget,
in addition to the lives lost and the lives that have been so badly hurt, $85 billion worth of equipment we gave them. I rebuilt the entire military. We gave them $85 billion worth of equipment. And we left many people behind. They're still behind. Nobody even knows what the number is. As president, I will always defend our military families. We will honor our great veterans, and we will restore peace through strength. Thank you. Thank you. Before I even arrive at the Oval Office shortly after we win the presidency, we win. We're going to win. We're going to win it as a group. I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled. And I will do something that nobody else even talks about because they have no idea what's happening, but I do. I will prevent World War III. I will prevent it. Big problem. Gonna happen. In my next term, we will build the Great Iron Dome over our country, a dome like has never been seen before, a state-of-the-art missile defense shield that will be entirely built in America and create jobs, jobs, jobs. And Pennsylvania is a big part of that, as you know. Pennsylvania, we're going to have, hey, 300 missiles were shot into Israel. Only one of them got through, and that was limping through. That got hit, too. Think of it. Why don't we have that? Why don't we have that? We're going to have a Great Iron Dome, the best. You know, Ronald Reagan wanted it, but really at that time, that was a long time ago, we didn't have the technology. Today you have incredible technology. We will build a Great Iron Dome, and we're going to build it right here, 100% here. We're not doing it in 17 different countries like these idiots build equipment. You build an airplane, you have the bolts made in Turkey. You have the wings made in London. I say, what the hell? Supposing you have to build planes quickly, what do? One of these countries doesn't come through. Maybe one of them's on the other side. It's the craziest thing. We ended it. I will not cut one penny from Social Security or Medicare, which Joe Biden is destroying by letting millions of people come into our country. He's destroying Medicare and Social Security. I will keep that promise for 4 straight years, and I will keep it again. Don't forget, for 4 years, I didn't do anything with Social Security. Other people would have. We're going to make our country rich again. We're going to make our country great again, and we're not going to do it by cutting Social Security. By contrast, Joe Biden has cut Medicare Advantage for the last 2 years. Did you know that? He's cut your Medicare Advantage, which is a total betrayal of seniors. And just check, you'll see it. He has cut you down for 2 years straight, and we're not going to do that. We don't need that. Remember this, we have more liquid oil. I call it liquid gold. We have liquid gold under our feet, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia. I had Anwar in Alaska approved, the biggest site anywhere in the world, probably bigger or the same size as Saudi Arabia. Everybody wanted it. Ronald Reagan wanted it. Everybody wanted it. Reagan couldn't get it. Bush couldn't get it, of course. Nobody could get it, but I got it. And the first thing they did is ended it. We're going to have it. We're going to have it restored. We'll get it back very quickly. It's one of the biggest sites in the world. Killer for Alaska, by the way, but a killer for the country, killer for the world. Would have supplied all of the Asian countries with oil. Then he ended closing it up. His Secretary of the Interior came in and said, nope, we're not going to do that. After years of trying to get it. We're going to rebuild our cities into beacons of hope, safety, and beauty better than they have ever been before. And that includes the place that we have to be in right now. And I'll deal with Democrat governors and I'll deal with Democrat mayors because that's what I have. But we're going to rebuild our cities. We're going to rebuild our cities better than they've ever been before. We will take over a horribly run Capitol in Washington, D.C. We will clean it up, renovate it, and rebuild our Capitol so that it's no longer a nightmare of murder and crime, but rather it will become the most beautiful Capitol anywhere in the world. And on day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and any other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto our children. And I will not give one penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. And I will keep men out of women's sports on day one. Signed. How embarrassing is it to say that? You know, there's some things that you can understand. You always like his business. You always like to understand the other side. I don't understand open borders. I mean, how stupid is an open border? But equally, and to be honest with you, much more importantly, open borders, because you have millions of people coming in, and they're coming from all of these places. They're causing tremendous death. Every day you read the paper now, you have a migrant crime, you have a migrant killing. It seems they're all young girls. They're all 13 and 12-year-old girls to a large extent. But every day you're reading about this. But how embarrassing is it for me to say, we will build a wall or we will build a border? But how embarrassing it is to say, we will keep men out of women's sports? Who would want men to play women's sports? And yet for them, for all these people, including the fake news media, for whatever reason, it's like a big deal. Who would want it? Did you ever look at the weightlifting records? Records that stood for 18 years. And a guy comes up, have you lifted before? No, I haven't. When I say a guy, a person who transitioned. Have you lifted before? No, I haven't really. A couple of days. Oh. Gets over the thing, bing, bing, bing. Are we crazy? Or the swimming, where they obliterate records, obliterate. The women get windburn as the boys go by. I'm suffering tremendous windburn. What happened? The doctor says. Oh, well, I was swimming. I'm an Olympic swimmer, but a person transitioned, and he went by me so fast that the wind burned the hell out of me, doctor. No, it's so crazy, and it's so horrible for women. It's so embarrassing for women. I will fully uphold our Second Amendment. We will protect innocent life, and we will restore free speech. And I will secure our elections like never before. Our goal will be one-day voting with paper ballots, proof of citizenship, and voter ID. Back to the old days. But until then, Republicans must win. We have to get out and vote. We want to do a landslide that's, you know the expression? Too big to rig. Too big to rig, right? From North Carolina, too big to rig. If you took you know, this is something, I used to say 5. I upped it to 10. I think I could practically up it to 20. If you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States and added them up, they would not have done near the destruction to our country as Joe Biden and the Biden administration has done. I think I could make it 20. Who's done this kind of damage? Who has done this damage where we have 20 million people poured in here and they shouldn't be here and they're destroying our country? So if you want to save America, get your friends, get your family, get everyone you know, and vote. Vote early, vote absentee, vote mail-in, vote in person. I don't care how they vote, just get out and vote. In addition, we need volunteers and poll watchers to watch and make sure they're not cheating, which of course they're going to try. It's the only way. Look, I'll tell you what. We came over here. There's a Trump sign on every lawn. It's crazy. We don't need the votes. You know what we need? We need to secure the vote. It's called Secure the Vote. We have a big program, Secure the Vote. We don't want them dumping ballots. We don't want them violating your state legislatures like they did. We have people with sign-up sheets here today, and basically you go protectthevote.com, protectthevote.com, sign up, because we cannot let this happen again. And Philadelphia was one of the most egregious places anywhere in the world. What happened in this city. So now they use COVID to cheat. They use a lot of things to cheat, but we're not going to let it happen again. You're not going to let it happen again. So in conclusion, From Harrisburg to Pittsburgh, from Easton to Bethlehem, and from Altoona to right here in Philadelphia, we stand on the shoulders of American legends who poured out their blood, sweat, and tears for our rights and for our freedom. This great city was the home of, wow, think of this, Benjamin Franklin, Betsy Ross, the American flag, and the Liberty Bell. Not too many cities can compete with that one. It's where Thomas Jefferson wrote the words, "All men are created equal," where our founding fathers declared American independence, where our Constitution was written to secure American freedom. I'll tell you, there is no place like this in terms of that. There is no place like this. And Philadelphia was the city that gave America generations of tough, strong Pennsylvania workers, families, soldiers, and patriots. And they all helped build this into the greatest nation in the history of the world. But now we are in serious decline. We are a failing nation. We are a nation that has lost its confidence, willpower, and strength. We are a nation that has lost, quite simply, its way. But we are not going to allow this horror to continue. Less than 4 years ago, we were a great nation, and we will soon be a great nation again. With the right leadership, every disaster sleepy Joe Biden has created can be fixed, and can be fixed very quickly. Every problem can be solved, and every wrong can be rectified. By this time next year, America's borders will be strong, sealed, and secure. They will be strong, sealed, and people will come into our country, but they will come in legally. Inflation will be in full retreat. Our economy will be roaring back. Optimism will be surging. The American dream, you don't hear about that, will be thriving again for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. Law and justice will reign all throughout our land. Freedom will be restored. The flame of liberty will be burning bright. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, will be a fading memory of the past. And our great silent majority, including the once forgotten men and women of our country, will be the one shaping America's magnificent future when I am the 47th President of the United States. Because we are all Americans, and together we will show November 5th to be the most important day in the history of our nation. And always remember, we are one movement, one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. And together we will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. We will make America free again. And we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you, Pennsylvania.
You know, I had already made a vow to myself that I was going to do anything that improved by even 1% my chances of staying sober. So, you know, I made an intellectual decision. I'm going to start believing in God. And then I confronted, you know, the universal dilemma, which is how do you start believing in something that you can't see or smell or touch or taste or hear or acquire with your senses? And and Jung answers that question. He says, fake it till you make it. Act as if that the compliance will precede the evidence. Then once you start complying and living like you're somebody who believes, pretending you believe, you'll actually start seeing evidence that will put that supposition beyond any reasonable doubt. So that's what I did. I just said, okay, I'm going to pretend there's a God up there, that he's looking at me the whole time. and that everything that I do is kind of a moral choice, has a moral dimension to it. And I began breaking and that I had to behave myself even when I didn't have an audience, and even when I didn't have eyewitnesses. So I started breaking my day down into about 40 different decisions, and each one has a moral implication. When the alarm goes off in the morning, do I get out of bed immediately, or do I lie in bed for another 15 minutes with my indolent thoughts? Do I hang up the towels when I go? Do I make my bed? That's the most important thing every day. Even when I'm staying at a hotel now, I make my bed, which is ridiculous. It's crazy to do that, but I do it because it's part of building character, which is what we're doing here. We're not here to build a pile for ourselves, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins. We're here to build character, which is the only thing that is enduring, that's durable, that will survive our own lives. And you do that by making the bed even when you don't need to, by doing the right thing even when somebody's not looking at you. So do I put the water in the ice tray before I put the ice tray back in the freezer? When I reach into my closet and I pull out a pair of blue jeans and all those little wire hangers fall on the floor of the closet, do I go in there and say, because what I used to do is say, hey, I got a lot to do today. I am too important for that job. That's somebody else's job. And I'd shut the closet door. And I left a lot of those closed closets all day long, for other people to do, right? And So now I go in there and I hang them all up, even if I'm in a rush. When I put the shopping cart back where it's supposed to go, and I remember when I first got sober, my life had gotten very, very small, which is what happens. You get isolated, you get small from addiction. And when I got sober, my life started getting big very quickly. And I was running through National Airport, and I was late for a plane. It was mission critical. I don't even remember what it was, but the apocalypse was going to happen if I didn't make that plane. And I was late and was already going to miss it. And as I was running, I was putting a piece of dentine in my mouth, and I wrapped the wrapper up, and I was running, and I threw the wrapper into a garbage can and make a perfect arc right into the center swish of the can. But I noticed through the corner of my eye that it must have hit something in there and jumped back out. I was like, well, that's God's fault because I made the shot, right? So I come running. But then I got about 40 or 50 feet down the terminal, and it just started eating at me. And I put on the brakes, and I went back and put that little piece of garbage back in the can, and I still made my plane. But the most important thing that day was, that I did was to do that. That little task is the most important thing I did on that day, because the whole challenge with life, and both sobriety, but also life, is how do we stay in that posture of surrender, of humility? How do we stay there even when the cash and prizes are flowing in and people are telling you how great you are and you got everything going for you? And that's when I want to say to God, thank you, God, I got it from here, and take the wheel and drive the car off the cliff again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, gotta watch out for that one. How long did the spiritual awakening take? How long were you in rehab for?
I had it from when I made that decision. I'll tell you what happened to me. I went out, I finished that book, and by the time I finished that book, I had made a decision. I'm going to turn my life over to God, okay, whatever that means, however I find him. And so I made that decision. And then I close that book, and I go out, these rehabs, they have a lot of volleyball, and we went out to play volleyball. And during that volleyball game, somebody hit a ball on a very, very powerful punch. It went way up in the air, and then it came down, and it hit the top of the post where the net was tied. And it started up again, and I said out loud, so everybody heard me, I said, that ball's going to get hit by a Mack truck. Oh, and the ball goes up again on this kind of errant flight. It lands right dead on the center of a chain link fence, and it topples over the other side onto a driveway, and it rolls down the grade about probably 40 or 50 feet into the middle of a thoroughfare. And a big 18-wheel diesel with a bulldog on the hood comes and pops, and it goes bang, a big resounding pop. And everybody there just looked at me and said, "How did you know that?" It was just a moment, but I was like, okay, this is, and I had just finished that book about synchronicity. So I said, I felt like, I was being tapped on the shoulder, and I said, I can either just say that was a coincidence and walk away, or I can see God in it, and I can be grateful and thankful and joyful, that I got to see it so soon, and now I see those things every day in my life. I rely on them, and as long as I stay in that posture of surrender, I have miracles in my life all the time, and it's like, my life before I figured this all out was all activity and no progress. I had a lot of ambition. I was like a big truck, that has headers and the pipes that are spitting fire and smoke, and the engine revving and the wheels spinning, stuck in a ditch going nowhere. But a lot of energy going into it and a lot of activity, getting stuff right to the end of the goal line and never getting across. And all of that, and now, when you connect to that higher vibrations, to that spiritual side, then it's almost like you can put down the oars and hoist the sails, and that you're being propelled, and it's like judo, because if you apply the effort toward your spiritual condition, then it pays off in all these other ways that just don't, in the reality that we live in, they don't seem connected, but they are. If you can stay in that high vibration, just good things happen.
So you get sober, and then you kind of...
Let me give you another metaphor, just while I'm thinking that just occurred to me. When I was a kid, sometimes I'd pick a flower, like a rose that was still in the bud, and then try to unfold it. And it never looks right, And a lot of times you have to just learn to be still. You do your job, which is watering the flower, but otherwise you leave it alone. And, I remember when I got out of the rehab, I read a line from Isaiah that said, "Be still and know that I am God." And that had a huge impact on me, of learning to be still is so much, because my life before was, including drugs, it's about, feeling discomfort and then having to fix it somehow. And, growing up is about learning to live with this discomfort and just experience it like dark clouds on the horizon, that it's going to come through, and that you just have to experience it and let it keep flowing, and there's nothing to do about it. And learning to be still, learning to be indifferent to pain, learning to be indifferent to pleasure, to desire. Those should be ultimately the ambition of an enlightened, of a spiritual enlightenment.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. filing a complaint with the Federal Elections Commission, accusing President Biden, former President Trump, and CNN of colluding to keep him out of CNN's upcoming presidential debate. It has been over 30 years since an independent presidential candidate appeared in a general election debate, and RFKJ is vowing to make this stage. This is RFKJ's fifth on our show. Back in March of 2022, we did a two-part in-depth series with Bobby that is a must listen. We did 2 hours on vaccines, and then we did a full 2 hours on his amazing background, tackled it all. A lot on Anthony Fauci. It was just so good. Everybody loved these episodes. You will too if you want to check them out. They're numbers 282 and 283. Bobby Kennedy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Megan, and yeah, thanks for putting me on back in. What was it? Was it March of 2022?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because you were one of the first people to let me on at a time when it was, very dangerous for other outlets to give me a platform, and I'm always been very grateful to you for that.
Oh, that was all so silly, and I'm thrilled to see you out there with your message and doing so well as you should be. That whole thing was so nonsensical. Okay, let me jump right into some of the issues. So this is interesting that you want into this debate. I would love to see you in this debate personally, but they're doing their level best to keep you out. Both Trump, Biden have said the terms are the terms. It's a two-man debate. That's it. And so what can the FEC do? You want them to bar CNN from holding it if they don't let you in?
Well, the FEC rules say that that candidates can't collude, particularly with a network, to exclude other candidates. Otherwise, it becomes an illegal campaign contribution. So what we know from the accounts, both from our conversations with CNN and also from the accounts in the Washington Post and other press outlets, was that, and just to back up for a second, what the FEC rules require is that the rules for the debate be pre-existing. In other words, the candidates have no input in them, and also that they be objective. So they can't be designed to exclude somebody. But in the conversations that were reported by the Washington Post between the Biden administration, between the Biden White House, President Trump's staff, and CNN, President Biden's staff was adamant that the rules needed to be designed to keep me off the platform. They said, if he's going to be on, we're not going to be on. He has to be off. President Biden said the same thing. Now, when we asked CNN, after hearing that, did you then create the rules? And CNN said, that's privileged, which of course it's not privileged.
No, it's not privileged.
Right. It's the opposite of privilege. It should be very transparent and available to the public. So, if you do collude with them, it becomes, as I said, an illegal campaign contribution. And, and we filed a complaint with the FEC to address that and to make rules that allow me into the debate. The other thing is, Megan, at the rules that they came up with is ironic. There's two rules that are designed to exclude other candidates. One of those rules is that each candidate has to have polls from four separate firms that are on a list of 12 polling firms, an approved list of 12 polling firms. That four of those polls need to show me at 15% or more of the public. And I think CNN assumed that I did not have the polls, but we submitted 5 polls, including their own poll from last month, which shows me at 16%. And the other polls are all from the list. And since then, yet another poll has come out from that list that has me at 15%. The final rule that they use to try to exclude me is a rule that says that you have to be on the ballot in enough states to get 270 electoral votes by June 20th. So we have enough signatures. We're on the ballot in 7 states. We have enough signatures now, as of today, for 17 states. By June 20th, we will have enough signatures for 343 electoral votes. Today, we have, I think, 225. But ironically, we are the only one who's on a ballot anywhere, because President Trump and President Biden are not on any ballots anywhere. They are, people presume they're going to be the nominees for the Democratic and Republican Party, but that is not locked in yet. Mm-hmm. So I'm the only one who will qualify for that requirement. And so CNN is kind of in a jam. And, we think that if FEC acts, then we will win this.
They don't want you. ABC doesn't want you. Trump and Biden don't want you. And right now, given the bypassing of the Commission on Presidential Debates, they're calling the shots. So this will be interesting to watch unfold. I think you'd be a great addition up there. I think it'd be fascinating to watch them respond to you and some of your issues, which are important. That's why you're polling well with a certain segment of the population. Let me ask you, Donald Trump quickly is on trial. The jury is deliberating the charges against him right now. We have read this week in Politico that President Biden intends to address the verdict when it comes down, we presume, assuming it's guilty. I don't know if he's going to do anything if it's not guilty. From the White House, that he's going to comment on a criminal case from the White House. Do you think that's appropriate?
I try to stay away from commenting on these cases because I think it feeds into this, national polarization. And I don't comment on President Trump's personal issues, on Hunter Biden or, any of the Biden administration's personal interviews. And I try to really talk about the economy, about the fact that we've got $34 trillion debt that's nobody's talking about, the fact that 60% of our kids are sick with chronic disease, the fact that 57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency, on the forever wars that both President Trump and President Biden support, and on this polarization that they both feed into, which is toxic and is more dangerous, I think, to our country than any time since the American Civil War. What I've tried to do, what I said when I declared a year ago, is I'm going to stay away from the these little cultural war issues that are orchestrated to keep us all at each other's throats, and to focus instead on the values that keep us together and the issues that are critical to us healing our country, both economically, spiritually, culturally, and healing the rift. I've been pretty disciplined about not commenting on the legal case. I don't.
Well, this isn't an ask for that. This is a question about whether you think it's appropriate. You're running for president, for the president of the United States to comment on an individual criminal matter, even one that involves a former president and, not for nothing, his chief political rival.
I don't think that I would comment if I were president. I don't think I would comment on this particular case. I think this is the weakest of the case against President Trump, and it's not kind of an existential case. I mean, maybe it's appropriate to comment if the case about the January 6th election, if that came down, it may be appropriate to make a comment about it. If it were me, I would try to focus on making healing comments rather than comments that demonize, the President Trump, who's, likely to be the nominee of the Republican Party, or that demonize people who vote for him and support him. I would really try to do something that was going to heal our country rather than increase the division.
It looks like it's going another way, but we'll see. First, we have to see what this jury does. And as I say, I'd be surprised if he said anything if Trump gets acquitted and hung jury. We'll find out. I guess we'll find out. All right, so I've got to ask you a couple questions. Last time we spoke, I asked you about your stance on legislation banning puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and these gender reassignment procedures for minors. And you said that you would support a ban if the minor didn't have parental permission, but you weren't sure about an outright ban, even where there's parental permission. Have you given any more thought to this issue?
Yeah, I have. My stance now is that I'm against them altogether for people under 18. And a lot of that is,
against the bans or against the procedures?
Against the procedure. I would ban them in kids under 18. I would say this. I think people who have gender confusion, that they need to be treated with compassion, with kindness, with utmost respect, and that any kind of bullying or vilification of people who are struggling with those issues should be, is itself contemptible. But there are a lot of there's this recent study in Europe, particularly from the UK, that throws water on a lot of the claims that were being made by the pharmaceutical industry and by the proponents
the
of
CAS
these
report.
gender blockers. Yeah, and I, having looked at that report, the results of that report, with some horror, I became convinced that this is, it's something that shouldn't happen. We stop kids from driving. We stop, we don't allow children to drink until they're 18. And these
21.
decisions, or 18 or 21. My kids used to drive up to Montreal, and I grew up in, when it was
That's
legal
right.
in this country.
Way back when we were little. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, the 21. So, and the decision to do this, these puberty blockers is consequential, and it has lifetime consequences. And a lot of people are remorseful about who make those decisions when they're young, are later on remorseful about the results. So my position is that we shouldn't allow them at all for kids under 18.
Well, this makes perfect sense to me, much more sense than before, because one of the things people love about you is how you are totally unafraid to call out the medical industrial complex. And that's why you were so vocal during the COVID lockdowns and about the vaccines and how we were being misled. And this, to me, seems like yet another area in which we could really use your honest voice. You touched on it in your answer there about how that same complex is making money hand over fist off of hurting children, off of chopping off the body parts of 14-year-old kids. It's nuts. And it's completely backwards to what the Hippocratic Oath requires of them. And yet we're seeing for ourselves now in this one example, some of the things you've been saying for years, which is they don't care about you. They care about themselves and their bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. What I always say to people is you can't convince me of anything by defaming me or calling me names. But if you show me facts, I'm going to, that I will change my policies or my worldview if I see facts that are not consistent with it. And, since the last time I've talked to you, I've done more research, and that report had I would say, transformative effect on me. And I just, the revulsion of just reading a couple of pages of it, I think anybody who reads that is going to come to the same conclusion that I did.
All right. What do you make of President Biden's changes to Title IX?
I don't really understand exactly what the implications are. Why don't you tell me? I know that they have that he's giving more. He's opening it up to people who are transgender. My position on that has been very, very clear. And my uncle wrote Title IX, Senator Ted Kennedy. He wrote it because women's sports were not being recognized or funded by the colleges, and women had been fighting for years and years to get those rights. And he was very, very proud of that. We were all proud of that accomplishment. I have right now, Megan, a niece, Zoe Hines, who is one of the star softball players on the BC college team. She's on a full scholarship. When she was growing up, Cheryl and I would invite her and her twin brother, who's also an athlete, to come skiing every year and to come visit us at the Cape in the summer. And she really wanted to do it, but she would never do it because she was devoting her life to trying to get these scholarships so she could go to college. It would be really ironic and tragic, in my view, if she could lose her place on that team to a boy who walks off of a boys' softball field and just says, well, I'm a girl now. and knocks her out of competitive play. So I don't think that's a good result. To the extent that President Biden's changes to Title IX would allow a result like that, I would oppose it. But I don't really know exactly what those changes are. I'd love to hear from you if you have better knowledge than I.
Well, I mean, this is a big issue for me, and I think a lot of my audience. He's changed Title IX with the stroke of his pen with his administrative agency to redefine who's protected by it. It's no longer just girls and women. It's now trans girls and women, which means men. Men are now protected by Title IX. And Title IX was a response to what had already been men's rights in the school setting, right? To create, at the time, equal sports and equal facilities and that kind of thing. But now, because of his changes, men have the right to use women's locker rooms and women's bathrooms, girls' bathrooms, K through college, and they can't say no. So if you have some hulking 275-pound man who last week ran as a male runner and he decides he's a girl now and he wants to run against the female runners, he can do it and he can use their restroom and he can do it, full man, full genitalia, no hormone therapy, no dress, nothing. He can parade around. I went to college when I was 17, a 17-year-old girl's locker room in college or beneath that with impunity. And on top of that, at the college level, a young man who gets accused, and I know you are related to Michael Skakel, and that's a case I have a lot of interest in because I'm a true crime lover. Anyway, he's a Kennedy who was accused of killing a young girl in a Connecticut neighborhood. And you had another family member who was accused down in Florida of a sexual sort of Me Too situation. In any event, my point in raising this is not to bring up the family tragedies, but these young men on college campuses, thanks to his changes, are no longer going to be afforded due process. Now they no longer have the right to counsel, the right to cross-examine. They now have the hearings held, their trials, their kangaroo courts, by the same person who investigated them. So the prosecutor winds up being their judge. They have no right to demand evidence. So if this girl's been texting her roommates, I was totally into it, it was consensual, these guys will never know that, all because of President Biden's stroke of the pen.
Just in defense of my cousin Michael Skakel, I did do a book on that.
Yeah, I read it.
On that, and I was able to track down the people who actually were responsible for the murder, which was not my cousin, and he was then released from prison because of that investigation. So I just wanted to say a word.
Questions linger. Questions linger. To be fair, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree that what you're saying. If those are the results, they're not good results, and I'm very, like I said, I'm against allowing males, biologically born males, to participate in consequential female sports.
Right, but this goes beyond that. We're talking about locker rooms and bathrooms now in the school setting.
Yeah, that probably doesn't make any sense either.
Okay. While we're on the topic of women's rights, let's talk about abortion. That's another issue that you've sent some mixed signals on, and I want to ask you about your position. Last August, you were speaking to reporters at the Iowa State Fair, and you said you'd sign a federal abortion ban after 15 weeks or 21 weeks if you were elected. Then your campaign came out and said you misunderstood the question and that your position on abortion is that, quote, it is always the woman's right to choose. He does not support legislation banning abortion, period. Then this month you sat down with our pal Sage Steele, who has her own podcast she just launched, and you said that women should have the right to an abortion even if full term, which lines up with your campaign's statement after your own spoken words at the Iowa State Fair saying 15 or 21 week ban. They said no. When you spoke to Sage, you seem to be saying no bans. A woman should have the right to choose even if full term. Quote, we shouldn't have government involved even if it's full term. Then there was outcry and you reversed yourself there, saying in a tweet, once the baby's viable outside the womb, it should have rights. It deserves society's protection. So at this point in your campaign, Isn't it fair to say you should have a firm position on this and be able to espouse it clearly and uniformly?
I suppose I should. I'll tell you what my own evolution was on this. I've been a medical freedom activist for my entire life. So my inclination is that government should stay out of medical procedures, and that with abortions, that we should trust women. We should trust the judgment of a mother. My understanding was that, well, you know, my initial understanding when I gave that interview in Iowa was that was the same as Roe v. Wade, which protects mothers and the woman's choice during the early part of pregnancy, but then later on in pregnancy after viability, that the state has an increasing interest in regulating and protecting that unborn child. And that interest would increase up to the day of pregnancy, of birth. I got blowback on that position, and particularly from my wife and her sisters, who are very close advisors to me. And one of the points that they made is that there's no woman who wants to get pregnant and then carry that pregnancy for 9 months and then at the last minute abort it. That just doesn't happen. And indeed, there's a lot of advocacy groups that say that literally never happens, that the choices that are made at the end of pregnancy to abort are choices that are made on usually on dire medical emergencies that involve either the health of the child or the health of the mother. And to me, it seemed like that's the last place that we want to bring in bureaucrats or government officials to make decisions. That's when you really want to leave the decision to a mother. When I gave that decision on Sage Steele, talked about that position on Sage Steele's program, I got a lot of blowback from people. And some data that indicated that actually there are a lot of not a dramatic number, but in the thousands of births each year that are elective abortions during the final month of pregnancy. And in my view, those should not happen. And I've seen the pictures that are very gruesome, as I'm sure you have. So I changed my position again. I'll change my position always based upon if I was wrong on the facts. I'm not going to dig in and defend a position where factually I believe that my initial position was wrong. So that's my position now is basically the same position as in Roe v. Wade, that the government does have at the end of pregnancy after viability, that the government does have an interest in protecting the unborn child.
So you say the final month of pregnancy, you saw gruesome photos about abortions there, which would be 36 weeks to 40 weeks. A pregnancy lasts 40 weeks. Are you saying that you would allow abortions all the way up to 36 weeks? Because viability happens a lot earlier, happens in the low 20s. Depends on who you ask, but between the low 20s to 28 weeks.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick a week, Megan. I would say that my policy would be the same as under Roe v. Wade, that the state, after viability, the state has an interest in protecting the baby.
Okay, so because under Roe v. Wade, that's where we did have third-term abortions happening in some places because they would leave it in various states up to the woman. And while it's true that it's rare for babies to be aborted in the third trimester in that final month, it does happen. That's how we wound up with Kermit Gosnell in Pennsylvania. I mean, there are some brutal butchers out there, and there are some negligent women who don't pay attention to their menstrual cycle, who will find themselves pregnant and who abort a perfectly healthy baby under the auspices of mental health. Should that be banned?
And well, as I said, I would leave it to the states to make their determination about when viability happens and what kind of regulation. I'm not going to dictate to the states where, exactly what kind of regulation. I think that should be up to the people of that state.
That position you just espoused is currently Trump's position, that it should be left to the states. It's a state's issue, and it's the default constitutional provision post-Dobbs, which got rid of Roe versus Wade. So
I think President Trump would give no protection to, as I understand his position, to the women's right to choose even early on in the pregnancy, and that's not.
He says it's a states' rights issue. He says it's a states' rights issue.
Yeah, it's a states' rights issue, and I would say that the women should have federal protection up until viability. That it's a woman's right to choose up till then.
So because President Biden wants to codify Roe, and Roe, Roe is kind of loose, right? Like you could use Roe to say a woman has the right to choose all the way through the 9th month if her health depends on it, is how they use it. And when you think about, okay, the mother's life, that's one thing. Of course, the life that's here and existing always gets precedence over the unborn life. But what they do is they create health exceptions, and then a mother, an irresponsible one, a person who doesn't care about her unborn fetus, says it's my mental health. And there are some ethical doctors who will perform abortion on a totally viable, healthy baby as late as 38 weeks because of that. Like that doesn't seem to me like it should be allowed. All right, I think we've beaten that one. We got it. Let's talk about immigration, because that's another one that's very important to, I know, right-leaning and now even left-leaning audiences and voters. More and more, this is the number one issue for Democrats, which is really telling. I've never seen that so high up on the issue ranking for Democrat voters, but it's there now. In October, you went to a rally and admitted that in the past, you believed in an open border, and that you felt that if a person was for sealing the border, it meant you were probably a xenophobe or a racist. You admitted that that's how you used to feel. Then you said you went to the border in Arizona and Yuma, and you called that border crisis you saw unsustainable and said a person's not bigoted for wanting a secure border. But then this month at a rally in Austin, you said the border issue is not an existential issue. You used that term in our interview today. It's not an existential issue. So how can you say that when we're looking at over 8 million illegal immigrants coming into this country under Joe Biden's presidency alone? How is that not existential for life in America as we now know?
I don't think that that was my characterization. If it was, then I would not make that characterization. I think what I was doing was talking about a number of cultural issues that generally are, I said are very important issues.
That's right. Here, I'll play it. We have the soundbite. I'll play it so the audience knows what we're talking about. Stop 22.
We have two presidents who are running today, two ex-presidents. One is the current president. They both had 4 years in office. They couldn't be more different than each other. But the issues that they're actually disputing on are a very narrow Overton window. It's what Nicole was saying. It's guns, it's abortion, it's the border, it's trans rights. These issues are all important, but none of them are existential. None of them are the issues that really matter to you, to me, to our children.
The border.
Yeah, well, if I was talking about another class of issues that are actually existential. I think arguably the border is existential, and maybe more than arguably, it just may be. What I saw on the border was cataclysmic, and I never thought that people who oppose, and I never thought we should have an open border. By the way, Megan, I thought that. I opposed for a time President Trump's wall, and I said I was wrong about that. We do need a wall. We don't need a wall 2,200 miles all the way from Brownsville, Texas to San Diego, but we do need a wall in the populated places that where immigrants undocumented immigrants can disappear very, very quickly. I think it was a huge, not just a mistake, but a catastrophe that President Biden suspended the construction on the wall when he first came into office, and then also began tearing down a lot of the infrastructure for making sure that didn't happen, and essentially implemented an open border policy, although President Biden's administration denies that. Everybody at the border knows that to be true. And but I watched 300 immigrants come across the border at between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. The first time I was there, I've been back, et cetera, but they were coming from all over the world. They were coming on buses that were owned by the Sinaloa drug cartel that was bringing them from the airport in Mexicali to the border in Yuma, and then allowing them 110 or 105 people on each bus. The first two buses that came were West Africans. There were only that whole evening, I only saw 2 Latin American families, one from Colombia, one from Peru. The rest of the immigrants were coming from Asia, from Ukraine, from China, from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Nepal, Tibet, India, Bangladesh. And they were responding to advertisements that the drug cartels put on TikTok and YouTube, where they offer immigration to the United States for $10,000 to $15,000 per person. And they all knew exactly what was going to happen to them when they crossed the border. The Border Patrol had been reduced, instead of defending the border, to processing all these new immigrants coming across. They give them a fingerprint check to see if they have a criminal record. If they don't have a criminal record, they bring them to the Yuma airport and put them on an airplane to any destination in the United States with no with a court date in the asylum court 7 years in the future. And 9 million, up to 9 million people have come across that way in the past 3.5 years. And yeah, I would say that is existential. There's no nation that can survive if it doesn't protect its borders. So, my bad.
Okay, let's talk about an issue that's somewhat obscure, but I think our audience is going to remember this. So way back we just celebrated our 800th episode, but way back in episode 125 of this show, before we'd even added video, we had on a rancher. She was from Wyoming, and she was objecting at the time to this bill, this law that President Biden had pushed through, which sought to give Black farmers federal financial assistance based solely on their race, not on their financial condition, not on any suffering they may have had economically, based totally on their melanin. And the farmers didn't wind up getting the financial relief because several lawsuits were filed claiming that's race discrimination. That's illegal under the Constitution. And so the program was frozen after an injunction. So I want to play you the soundbite of this rancher who we interviewed. Take a listen.
It's basically a slap in the face saying, hey, just because you're white, you can't apply. And, it's wrong. And you've been talking about the USDA's past discrimination. Well, a big part of it is women like me have been discriminated against, not me specifically, but women in the past. And they're completely overlooking that aspect of it. And so being a white woman who's recognized as being socially disadvantaged, it does humiliate me because I should be a part of that group. And then, I look down at my neighbors who are struggling, who are barely getting by, and I don't know if they're going to make it another year. And it's humiliating to them because they don't feel like they deserve it enough either. And, it's just completely wrong.
Okay, now you were recently on a podcast with a Black farmer and vowed to give Black farmers this money. Now, I've just outlaid for you why it's so controversial. Do you stand by that pledge?
Yeah, and I think the woman that you talked to does not have the whole story. Here's what happened, Megan. There's a program within the USDA and the Department of Agriculture that is designed to help small farmers across this country, which was the reason that the USDA was launched in the first place. USDA now does the opposite of that. It protects big, industrial agricultural production, and basically enables a war against small farmers. But there is a program that still exists within USDA that's designed to give low interest loans and grants to small farmers. As it turns out, the man who was running that program for decades was a man who was intensely racist. And
there is a racist history within the group, conceded, but I want to get to present day because I will. I've been letting you finish, but I just want to make sure that we're on point here because under our U.S. Constitution, it's unconstitutional to discriminate on the basis of race. You can't do it to whites, just like you can't do it to blacks.
Yeah, and if you let me finish what I'm saying, and I agree with you that you can't have it, under the particularly under the Harvard decision that the Supreme Court, that Judge Roberts just issued, there is no, affirmative action or race-based affirmative action legal in this country, but that's not what this is. The Black Farmers Association, this individual within USDA simply cut off all grants to Black people because of their skin color, but he gave the money to whites and to white farmers. And I think most Americans would agree that that was wrong, that you can't, of course, you can't have race-based benefits, but you also shouldn't suffer race-based deprivations of grants to which you're entitled to. And this association, the Association of Black Farmers, sued the USDA, and they won in court. And the court quantified exactly how much money that Black farmers had been deprived of during that period since this guy started running the program. So it was a specific amount of money that a court and a jury had decided on, and they awarded it to the Black farmers. It was just a class action suit. Well, because the suit is against the government, Congress has to appropriate that money. And although the money was put in the presidential budget, Congress refused to appropriate it. So that's the issue. Would you, should that money be paid out to people to whom it is owed? Or should it not be? This is not a race-based benefit.
Yes, it is.
This was a benefit. Well, that's what you say. What I would say
is. We took a hard look at this bill at the time, and you could get it irrespective of your financial condition. Meghan Markle could go out there and say, I just bought a ranch. Oprah, she has a ranch in California. She could say, I am Black and I want the assistance, and she could get it. It was irrespective of financial condition.
Yeah, well, then you're talking about a different instance than I was talking about, because the instance I was talking about was specifically related to this case.
I know this case. That happened 30 years ago. And typically the remedy would be, you sue for damages and then you try to get your damages, and then you don't take the money out of the taxpayers' wallets 30 years later who had nothing to do with what happened back in the day.
It was litigation that they won 30 years ago, and that simply was not, I don't know if it was 30 years ago.
But we have liability, there's a reason we have those caps on what the federal government can pay, because it's the taxpayer who winds up having to pay these judgments. I'm not saying I don't have empathy for the Black farmers. I'm just saying the program that was shut down was not remedy for a judgment the government never paid. It was a giveaway to Black farmers and ranchers, and when whites wanted to apply, they were told no.
And Megan, then you're talking about a different issue than I was talking about when I said that I would make sure that money was paid. The money I was talking about was the money that was owed to Black farmers, and that a court had said it was owed to Black farmers, and there is no cap on federal recoveries. There was just a refusal because Congress has to approve any appropriation, including an appropriation or lawsuits that the federal government lost from engaging in negligent or reckless or malicious behavior. Congress still has to appropriate it. Oh, and the person who who brought that lawsuit at the outset, who was a farmer who was continually denied denied grants and loans that other farmers, he was sitting in the office sometimes for days at a time, and white farmers were walking past him, picking up their loans and leaving after 6 or 8 minutes.
Got it. No one's defending that. I understand. No one's defending that.
Well,
What we're talking about.
You seem to be defending it.
I'm not defending it at all.
Okay,
I'm objecting to race-based relief for farmers and ranchers in 2024. It's illegal, period. Okay, I got to take a break because I'm up against it. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. I know, I got it. You're suggesting I am defending no relief to any farmers who have been aggrieved by the U.S. government. The way you handle that is you file a lawsuit the way they did. And I understand they didn't get the relief they wanted. It's unfortunate, but that doesn't necessarily mean 30 years later you create an unfair program to remedy these past wrongs in which white economically disadvantaged ranchers get screwed. We've gone through it. We've spent far too much time on it. On the topic of Trump and Biden and where you fit in, is, you got to take votes from both of those guys in order to make this happen. You're starting to get the attention of the Trump campaign, which is probably a good sign for you. And the Trump spokesperson, Steve Chung, came out and said the voters should not be deceived by you, suggesting that this is a, quote, vanity project for you, for a liberal Kennedy looking to cash in on his family's name. Now, it is true, according to you, that you voted for Barack Obama in 2008, and you voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, and you voted for President Biden in 2020. So why shouldn't Republican voters have some doubts about you?
Well, I would say, first of all, that, if you're, my promise when I announced this was that I was going to try to persuade Americans that they weren't Republicans or Democrats anymore, and that they were Americans, and that they're Americans first. What I would say to you is, I'm not going to characterize myself as a conservative or liberal. I'm neither a Democrat or a Republican. Listen to the issues. And if you don't agree with my issues, then you should vote for somebody else the way that I handle the issues. If you have a candidate who agrees with you more, who thinks it's okay to be at war in the Ukraine, who is okay with the $34 trillion debt, who's okay with having 60% of American kids have chronic disease, and who's okay with the regulatory agencies in our country being run by the industries they're supposed to regulate, and this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that President Biden and President Trump have presided over, then if you're okay with all that, then you should vote for one of them. If you're tired of those things and want to do something different, if you want to change, if I get elected president, all that's going to change. The government's going to stop lying to you. Why? Because on my first day in office, I'm going to issue an executive order saying that any federal employee who lies to the American public in conjunction with his job will be fired. I'm going to stop the CIA from propagandizing Americans and from censoring Americans. I'm going to fire any federal employee who participates with the mainstream media or the social media in censorship. I'm going to stop the chronic disease epidemic and save this country $4.3 trillion we're now spending on chronic disease. When my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today it's 60%. Diabetes in this country. When I was a kid, a typical pediatrician would see one diabetes case in his lifetime. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walk through his office door is either pre-diabetic or diabetic, and it's costing us more than the defense budget to deal with diabetes. President Biden and President Trump have never mentioned that issue. They're never going to. They're never going to fix the budget deficit. Why? Because they ran it up. President Trump, in 4 short years, ran up $8 trillion in debt, more than all the presidents combined from George Washington to George W. Bush. And President Biden is trying to beat him on that. And neither of them are going to deal with the existential issues that are actually threatening our country. So if you want to label me as a conservative or as a liberal, I don't think it's accurate. I think I'm trying to have a common sense solutions to what's happening in this country. I promise to listen to people, to change my mind when I'm wrong on the facts, to not demonize and marginalize and vilify other Americans, but to try to find the common ground that we all share in common, rather than, focusing on the trials and the culture war issue and the race issues that, Republicans and Democrats are all trying to get us to focus on. And it's like jangling the keys. Even the issues that you focus on today, Megan, are all culture war issues. It's like
these are important. These are important too. I have a huge audience, Bobby, as you know. I have a huge audience, and these. But listen, no, that's not fair. Don't go there. I know the issues that interest my audience, and there's a reason this is one of the top shows in the nation. So don't disparage what matters to them. Okay? The issue about young women and young girls and our rights and due process on college campuses and the right of the unborn and the immigration issue and race baiting by our highest officials, those matter. Those matter. Your issues matter too. I love what you just said. It was the best answer you gave the whole interview. But don't diminish what matters to my audience, because that's also important. I'll give you the last word. I blew my last commercial break for you. I'll give you the last 40 seconds.
Yeah, I say, focusing on there's certain issues that are allowed in the political dialogue. And I didn't mean to disparage your issues. I'm just saying those are the issues that everybody talks about. And then you look around and you say, but, there's all these other issues like the continual wars and nobody's talking about. And no,
you're right.
Those are the ones
I
that
get
I'm
that.
to
trying
I got to cut you off
focus
because the
on,
computer's it's going to end us in 10 seconds. Those are important, and we've discussed those on some of your earlier appearances, and I hope there'll be another one. I admire you. Thank you so much for being here. Bobby Kennedy. Back to
Thank you, Megan. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Dustin Kittle. Dustin was raised on a cattle and poultry farm in Geraldine, Alabama. He served as a state Future Farmers of America officer in high school. And he attended Cumberland Law School and began practicing litigation focused on agricultural and environmental law. He has represented small farmers and rural Americans in successful cases against a lot of Fortune 500 companies, including Ford, Verizon, Wireless, and Windstream Communications. In 2020, he worked with the U.S. Department of Justice in proposing amendments to the CARES Act to provide relief for farmers and ranchers. He is the owner of Snow Creek Ranch, and he also Snow Creek Law, which is a law firm in Santa Fe, Tennessee. He's devoted his life to small farmers and has very interesting information about corruption at the USDA and the shift of land in this country, of our agricultural land base to foreign ownership. And the USDA was created back in the 1930s to save small farmers and to protect farmers from the banks, which were victimizing them and making them bankrupt. And today, its job is just the opposite. Its job is representing big agriculture and subjugating and destroying small farmers in America. Tell us a little bit about your story, Dustin.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for having me, Mr. Kennedy. Definitely appreciate it. Appreciate the independent stance that you've taken on these agricultural issues. Like you mentioned, I grew up on a cattle and poultry farm. My parents did not go to college. Their dream was to live and work on the farm. We were farming back in the 1980s when in poultry, and you still do with the tournament system. And so I learned a lot about poultry and cattle as far as the markets, the unpredictability, and the fact that the farmer themselves, particularly at the family farm level, they have no real control as far as the outcome. They are always at someone else's mercy. And as you mentioned, I opened my own law firm in 2010, have focused on agricultural law, and really have done that as kind of a way to honor my parents' commitment as far as in farming. It was not always easy for them, and I saw the corporate agriculture that was closing in on family farms, and I felt like that going to law school, becoming a lawyer, was a way that I could make a difference in it, and going up against some of these Fortune 500 companies. The unfortunate reality is that most family farms are in the position to where they can't go out and hire a hired gun lawyer. They're doing all they can to keep their farms going, and they need an attorney that understands the agricultural issues involved, that is willing to come in and help them in a fight that is a David versus Goliath story between family farms and corporate agriculture.
Well, talk about this shift that's happening.
Absolutely. It's really the story on it, I would say, goes back. I'll go all the way back to 2002. In 2002, you started having business deals that were made at that point in time between politicians and people in corporate agriculture or corporate energy. And by 2009, when Barack Obama comes into office and brings in Tom Vilsack, former governor of the state of Iowa, he brings alongside with him a couple of individuals, one of which was the undersecretary, Dallas Tonsager, who was from South Dakota. Their plan focuses from that point forward on energy as far as renewable fuels, and then also rural utilities. And really, when you look back at that, that is when I first started getting involved. I had litigated against many private companies, but in going against the government, it's an entirely different beast. They're the ones that are interpreting laws that they have written, and they have certain immunities, as you know, and they make it very difficult for you to defeat them. But in 2014, I found out as part of a USDA program, which was called Connect America, they had doled out billions of dollars to these rural utility companies to supposedly fix our broadband internet. But there were no parameters. There was no oversight. At the time that the money was passed out, there were not even any guidelines. And that money went out through the USDA. And during that, I represented what ended up being about 10,000 rural customers who were not getting the internet speeds that they were promised by their providers. And what we were able to do in ultimately winning over 90% of those cases in arbitration was we were able to show that they had told the USDA they couldn't provide high-speed internet at certain addresses. But those addresses would have my clients there, and they would be billing my clients for high-speed internet for all those years. So we were able to pursue refunds, but that was my first taste that we have got some serious corruption going on in Washington, D.C., and particularly at the USDA level. My fight would continue back with them in 2021. I litigated against Windstream Communications on the rural utilities issue until the point that Windstream went into bankruptcy. And one interesting point there is that while Windstream was in bankruptcy, they continued to get government funding. And I was just looking at this the other day because really I had not even thought about Windstream that much since they had bankrupted. They converted from being a Fortune 500 company to privatizing after bankruptcy. They were allowed to come out of bankruptcy with an FCC exemption because they are owned over 25% by foreign entities, which they should not have been allowed to do. They're continuing to receive funding, federal funding, and they are owned at a 60-something% ownership rate by foreign interests. So that just shows with the USDA program the lack of due diligence, the lack of oversight. In 2021, we come back and we have an issue with farm credit. And farm credit, for people that don't know, I wasn't completely familiar with them, but they control 46% of the nation's agricultural debt. So they're a giant. And if you look back historically, the Farm Credit Administration was created in 1933. At that time, we were at our nation's peak as far as we had 6.8 million farms. And over their 90 years since then of managing it and what is supposed to be the mission of protecting family farms, we've lost 5 million family farms. We're down to 1.8 million family farms. And what I discovered in 2021 was they are manipulating the system. Just like with the USDA, there was no oversight. You had farmers whose loans were being placed in distress, like mine was. And my situation was retaliation because I was representing a group of farmer borrowers and just happened to have a loan.
Just so people know, normally you would expect a loan to be placed into distress if the farmer missed a payment.
Right.
What they were doing was these were farmers who were making all their payments, and they simply wanted to steal their farms. So they declared them in distress, even though there was no distress. And that actually put them in distress because now they had to hire lawyers. And they were able to essentially steal the farm from the farmer.
Absolutely. And the government went out and hired private law firms. And I'm not talking about a 5 to 10 person firm that's some kind of boutique shop. They hired some of the biggest law firms in the nation and internationally to go in and negotiate with these farmers. And so you might have a default provision in your mortgage that says, if someone whose name is on that deed passes away, we can default on them. Now, obviously, that doesn't make sense, but that was in the language. What they would then do is have these private hired gun lawyers come in, negotiate with the farmers who most of the time could not hire a lawyer. And they would ultimately tell them, you don't want to go through this process of having to be foreclosed on. You could lose it all. Here's what we would do on it. We'll take a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And to make things even more egregious, when they were doing that, a lot of these law firms were then having the farmers sign a release of claims as well as confidentiality. And I would argue that it's because they absolutely knew that what they were doing was inappropriate, but they were protecting themselves in two ways. Number one, if that farmer ever found out it was inappropriate, they couldn't sue anybody. But number two, with these confidentiality agreements, and they've had farm credit employees sign confidentiality agreements, it cuts out the whistleblowers. You're scared to death to talk because then they could turn around and they could sue you. And so we represent right now 200 farmers, and those farmers, some of the ones that have been forced to sign confidentiality agreements, even though they can speak to me as their lawyer, they're scared to death because they don't want to have to go back against farm credit, and they're scared to speak up and even tell their story. And so it was part of a manipulated plan to put pressure on the farmers to take that land. And you look at it, and what there has been a complete shift in the model of how farm credit does business. And what they will attribute it to is they're trying to make the system sound. Well, the system either is going to survive or it's going to fail. Its mission was to save the family farm. We can't decide all of a sudden in 2009 we're going to change that mission to we're going to save agriculture as a whole. And when I say agriculture as a whole, now they're doling out loans to JBS. They're doling out loans to Tyson. And this is farm credit. And we're not talking about $100,000 lines of credit. We're talking about billion-dollar loans to those companies. You look at
these are companies that have their business model is putting small farmers out of business.
Absolutely.
Tyson's Food, Smithfield, Purdue put 1 million chicken farmers out of business in this country and industrialized chicken farmers by changing the model so that where you have 100,000 birds raised in battery cages and dosed with subtherapeutic antibiotics that cause them to lay their guts out over a short, miserable life, and they made themselves, Tyson, Purdue, Bo Pilgrim made themselves billionaires by putting, I think, 1.2 million chicken farmers out of business. Smithfield came and did the same thing with hogs. Smithfield dropped the price of hogs from $60, from 60 cents a pound to 2 cents a pound. By raising them in these, in these Murphy sheds, where in industrial setting, and they put out, and it cost a farmer at that point 30 cents a pound to raise the hog to kill weight. So it put out of business virtually all the independent hog farmers in the country, and replaced them with a big corporation that now controlled probably 30 or 40% of hog production nationwide. And that company then sold itself to the Chinese. So Smithfield is now a Chinese company and and controls a lot of the American landscape, and it controls our food production. And these enterprises, which are stealing family farms from the farmer using our federal dollars, are now colluding with the USDA to force small farmers to default on their loans.
And what it has created is to where the farmer themselves, they're a commodity. They can take that family farm, they can move one farmer out, roll another one in, give them a new loan with farm credit. They'll upgrade their equipment with Tyson, for example, if you're a poultry farm, and they continue with that dance. There have been so many of my clients who had long-term, low-interest, historically low-interest loans that were in great positions, and they have been forced off the farm. And one other mechanism that they work together to do is in loan assignment agreements. And I listened to your interview with Mr. Boyd several weeks ago, and he was speaking of poultry loan assignments. And to give you an example, I know you're familiar with the state of Alabama. I believe you lived there for a couple of years, but Alabama farm credit is really at the heart of a lot of these issues. They were out front in some of the things that they were doing, and that is a very strong foothold in the commercial poultry businesses in the state of Alabama. And what they were able to do is they will take a percentage of that poultry grower's check that is coming from a Tyson, for example, that goes directly to the farm credit institution for them to hold as what they call extra security. Now, they've already got the farm secured. On some of these, on about 28% of the loans, they've already got the government to back those loans. So there's no real security beyond that needed. But they will figure that those assignments all the way up to even 65% of what the poultry grower is getting. And those assignments are required. So if you've got it on a 65-35, the poultry farmer is getting 35%, 65% is going to Alabama Farm Credit, who's holding that money to make your next payment. Here's what ultimately has happened, though. They are figuring the assignments incredibly high. The money is continuing to accumulate. Farm Credit as a whole cannot hold bank deposits. They are holding that money in uninsured accounts. And what happened in the state of Alabama, and this is a tragedy that should be on the front page of every newspaper, there are over 1,000 poultry borrowers at Alabama Farm Credit who had funds being held. And we think the number will end up being somewhere between $60 and $100 million. But those funds are just gone. They have told the farmers that the funds have been taken out of those accounts and will be applied to the end of their loan. And really what happened, we believe, is that that Farm Credit Institution got close to failing. They had those dollars already spent, so to speak. They're apparently, when they had to stop taking the deposits, their other option would have been to give that money being held in those accounts back to the farmers, and they couldn't come up with it. It essentially created an artificial bank run when they stopped holding deposits, and they took the farmer borrowers' money. And to give you an example, I represent a guy named Carl Brooks from DeKalb County, Alabama. They have admitted they have $60,000 of Carl Brooks' money that they took out of that funds held account. He's still having to make his payment. He's having to work a second job right now while they've got $60,000 that they're telling him, we're going to apply this to the back end of the loan. And I say that to say that is an extreme example of the fact that there is zero oversight all the way to the top at Farm Credit. The Farm Credit Administration has not ruled in favor of a borrower that we can find since 1987. And, you know, in my situation, I appealed to the Farm Credit Administration, let them know we've not missed a single loan payment. And here they are, they're trying to literally foreclose on us. And they told me that they needed more time to look into it. I had recorded calls, I had letters, everything. And I ended up being the longest investigation in U.S. Farm Credit Administration history, 657 days, for them to ultimately tell me they violated the law 7 different ways of federal law. However, I was no longer a borrower in the U.S. Farm Credit System. I've been forced to sell my house and pay all my loans off. And so there was nothing they could do for me. And that's what they're doing for all of these farmers. Most of the farmers wouldn't have had the option I did, to where I sold my personal house, paid my loans off. Had I not had that option, I would have had no recourse whatsoever, because the U.S. Farm Credit Act has no private right of action, which is, I mean, you think about how rare that is. Imagine if, for example, laws related to clean water, if you had to depend on, well, is the EPA going to step in? And you had no private right of action to be able to hold people accountable. And they've completely taken that away and put all the authority in a Farm Credit Administration that is complicit in this. They're seeing it as a money-making opportunity. They're running it as a private bank, but getting the benefits of government protection.
So who's making money on this? I mean, is it Tom Vilsack, or who is?
Well, it is. Let me give you an example. So Tom Vilsack, as I mentioned, in 2009, he comes in and he puts Dallas Tomsager in charge as the undersecretary. Here's a few key facts. In 2007, while he was serving on the Farm Credit Board, the 3-member Farm Credit Board, Tomsager started Rural Americans for Obama. While he was in that position, he campaigned. He was on Obama's transition team. He gets put in the USDA. Before Obama goes out of office, he reappoints him a second time into the Farm Credit Administration, which by the Congressional Research Service says that that was improper. 2 weeks after Donald Trump upset Hillary Clinton, he names Tomsager as the chairman for the next 4 years. But you back up all the way to 2002. Tomsager made a deal with Tom Hitchcock. Tom Hitchcock would become the CEO of Redfield Energy. Redfield Energy would ultimately be the company that was the first ones to come up with this carbon capture in an ethanol plant. And they did it in 2015. That's when they first started looking at it.
Which is the biggest boondoggle today in it's discrediting the entire environmental movement, because it's showing, I mean, it's this terrible, terrible example that the climate crisis is being used by the richest corporations in America to subsidize their bad behavior and make hundreds of billions of dollars through carbon capture, which does absolutely zero for the environment and actually subsidizes bad behavior.
Right. And that gets categorized as a farm subsidy. And if you go back and look at those releases in 2015, when they first discovered this technology, There was not a mention about anything being about environment. What they said is if we use this machine and we crush this down, we can get 8% more yield. And that's why we need to do it. Within 3 years, the reason they needed to do it was environmental. And they had come up with this idea to go with the pipeline. Redfield, which again, you're talking about the CEO, was the business partner during this period of time with the guy that had served as the undersecretary of the USDA, and he was the board chairman of Farm Credit. He ends up passing away in 2019, Tom Sager does, but not before in 2018. All of a sudden, the new rave of what they're trying to do is we're going to take this out and we're going to take it on a pipeline and we're going to bury it. And so Redfield Energy partners with Summit. And you can pull up the information now. So you have, and you look back at all the funding that those entities received. But how is that not collusion? We had a guy on the inside of Farm Credit and the USDA that had a direct business interest in this carbon capture and in the Summit pipeline. They both had consulting businesses. They both had an energy business. And that is too much of a coincidence to have not been a completely manipulated scheme. And you look at what the environmentalists say about the pipeline, they say it's going to have a negative impact. And all
the Sierra Club opposes it. There's 3 actual pipelines, and it's about 3,000 miles of pipe. And it's taking condensed carbon, from a couple of dozen methane plants. The methane plants are already, sort of a dubious project, but it's taking the excess carbon from those plants, and actually, it's very energy intensive to convert the carbon into this liquid form. So you're actually using more energy to take that carbon out of the methane plants, and then you put it in a pipeline. And what they say is we're going to bury this carbon in deep injection wells where it will never leak. Well, every time they buried it in those wells, it has leaked, and it ended up killing a lot of people in Mississippi and disabling a lot of people in Mississippi, and permanent brain damage in some people because when it leaks out of the pipe, it robs the air of oxygen. And actually, the emergency vehicles that came in to respond could not operate because there was no oxygen getting to their engines. And there were a number of people who were very badly injured. But they're building 3,000 miles of these pipelines, which all of them are susceptible to leaking. They're condemning the farmland, thousands of acres of farmland to build that pipeline in the richest breadbasket of America. And they're sending them, the destination, the terminus of the pipeline, are the Bakken crude oil fields. And it's clear that what they're going to do with it is to use it to drive it, to extend the lifetime of those oil fields by injecting it into wells and pushing out more oil. So it's actually going to create more carbon. Right. One of the third pipeline, the destination is oil fields, again, declining oil fields in southern Illinois. The owners of it are Bruce Ratstetter, who's given hundreds of thousands of dollars to political figures in Iowa, and including the governor, and BlackRock, which owns the biggest of the 3 pipelines. So you've got the biggest players in America. I think that the total amount of subsidies is about $179 billion to the richest people in the country to do something that is environmentally absolutely catastrophic. And it's under the pretense, it's all under President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. It's the biggest project in his Inflation Reduction Act, which is supposed to reduce climate crisis, and it will do nothing. It will probably aggravate the climate crisis. It will aggravate, let me put this, emissions of carbon into the environment. It is... it's just a classic boondoggle.
the amount of water that it takes as well. You pull these water permits, and a big part of this is you look. Iowa is knee deep in this deal with the pipeline, and of course, Bill Sachs, the former governor there. South Dakota is not far behind them in all of this, and again. You have the number 2 and number 3 man during Obama's administration, both coming from South Dakota. But if you pull the water permits, you will see they have taken out permits to cool the pipeline. And there will be an impact, very similar to what's going on right now in the state of Idaho. And there's questions about whether or not these cobalt mines, which are that's a very similar related issue, are what has made these farmers have to shut off the water supply as we're going right here into the prime of crop season. They can't get an explanation for it. And if you look at the permits that have been pulled by these cobalt companies, it's pretty surprising the amount of water that it takes. It's not a natural process. It actually will create a vacuum that will drain the water.
And you're talking, just so people know about these cobalt mines. These are cobalt mines that are in Idaho, and they received money from the $60 billion that we just sent to Ukraine. In that bill, there was a hidden provision to the mining companies to mine cobalt in Idaho, and we just learned that there were 200 Congress people who then went and invested in these mining companies. And after voting to send to invest our federal dollars into those companies, having something to do with the Ukraine war, which we don't really understand. But it was, it's a classic insider trading, but it's all legal because it's Congress. But what you're saying is that those mines are taking water from the farmers who need it in Idaho, and that those farmers are not going to have the water to do food production.
That's right. We have, you talk about the ultimate in sabotage between the family farm versus corporate agriculture. That cobalt mine, the one that's kind of at the center of it, and I will tell you, I pulled the permits. There are different aquifers that are at stake here, but there are a lot of cobalt mines that are in Idaho, and I think ultimately what we will end up finding is that a lot of this is related to the water issues. But the cobalt mine, the main one that's in question that just received the Department of Defense funding, it failed last year. It should have went out of business. They spent all of this money, took all of these investments, had a ribbon cutting with the governor there, Brad Little, who has not come to the aid of the farmers on this water issue. And then all of a sudden, cobalt prices fell down to the point to where it was more expensive to mine that cobalt than what they could sell it for. And they let that business sit there while they pleaded for federal funding that they ultimately received under the auspices that this is a national security matter, because of the fact that most of the cobalt is going to be coming from outside the U.S. My understanding, I guess Idaho is one of the only locations. But if you look back, again, we talk about environmental issues because they sell this as being a part of the environmental plan. But if you go back to the 1940s even, they were mining cobalt in Idaho. We're just now getting to the point that everyone has forgotten that they actually disturbed the environment then and had environmental issues with those cobalt mines that were catastrophic to the water supply. So it's not just an issue of draining the water supply, it's also an issue of contaminating it. And, no one in Idaho has brought that up, the history that they have contaminated it, not this company. This company, by the way, it's not even an American company. It's an Australian company that has come in and done this. And so, again, it's all part of a process of shifting over these subsidies to corporate agriculture, the people that don't need it. If anybody doesn't need a farm credit loan, it's Tyson Foods. And, right now, to show you how far out of balance we are with our whole policy, There are more dollars worth of loans that go out through the government for agriculture in $25 million and above loans than all the ones that are below 25 million. And that's hard to even conceive. I mean, again, we're talking about programs that were set up directly to benefit the farmer. And there is just this quiet sabotage that's going on. The farmers don't have a voice in Washington, D.C. The Farm Bureau represents, in my opinion, a completely different interest than what family farms are. We have 1.8 million family farms. The Farm Bureau has 6 million members. How can they pretend to speak on behalf of the entire farming industry when corporate ag and family farms have literally competing interests? And so we've got to find a way to get a voice for these family farms, because it involves more than just tractors and plows. It involves our food supply, it involves the water supply, and we've got to find a way that the consumer can come to the farmer's defense in this, and I think they will. And I think going through COVID probably helps that. We're a little bit more conscious of those kinds of issues, but we need a national voice that is taking up for the family farms. We need to get back to growing quality food as opposed to quantities of food, and it's doable. We just need an entire reshape of the mindset to it all, and really just to go back to what the original mission of these programs was. And to do that, there's going to have to be a house cleaning at Farm Credit and the USDA.
Yeah, well, I'm going to do that as president. I'm going to put USDA and Farm Credit back on the side of small farmers. And you're right. It's our food supply. We no longer produce anything the USDA touches is not food. It's commodities. It's commodities. That's what they are producing. And they're conspiring with these giant agricultural producers like Smithfield, Tyson's, Purdue, Pilgrim, and to create commodities with very, very low quality products that are poisoning our people. And we need good food, high quality food. We need small farmers producing it. Thomas Jefferson said American democracy was rooted in the control of our landscapes by tens of thousands of yeoman farmers, each with a stake in our democracy and our system of government and our economy. And that we're now making a war on the small farmers of this country. And before we close out, Dustin, let's talk about the foreign influence here. How do we know how much of our agricultural landscapes are now controlled by foreign governments, and specifically the Chinese?
Right. So there is no good way to know the exact answer on that. What we do know is it's an alarming enough number that the government themselves are even sounding the alarms. Farm Services put out a report over the last couple of years sounding the alarm, saying that foreign land holdings between 2017 and 2022 almost doubled. We had a situation of where in 2017 there was 28 million acres that were owned by foreign interests as far as American farmland, and now that number is getting closer to 50 million acres. And so the other part to that, though, is they admit in that report they are having to rely on voluntary reporting. The only way to go around and figure this out exactly would be to go to every courthouse in America. And I'll add 2 points on that. One of the ways that I knew we had a problem is when I was in the middle of the investigation with the Farm Credit Administration, where I was asking them for help. In the Farm Credit Act, you can request a list of your fellow stockholders. And being concerned as far as what was going to potentially happen, I requested that list. When I received it, I was shocked by the number of foreign interests that were on that list. And at that time, I wouldn't have even thought that U.S. Farm Credit, a government-sponsored enterprise, could do business dealings and could do loans with foreign interests. I found out that they had been doing it really since 1997 when they adjusted some loopholes to it. But The real window we've got hit hard was between 2017 until now. And I'll tell you real quickly, Dallas Tonsager that I mentioned, going back to the USDA guy that's connected with those energy programs, he passes away in 2019. President Trump appoints an outsider to the board, a gentleman named Rodney Brown, but for 2 years, Rodney Brown could not get a Senate confirmation hearing. Farm Bureau and the Farm Credit Council itself both wrote letters to the Senate Ag Committee saying that they didn't want him. He was not a farmer. He was somebody that was coming in as a compliance and private banking expert, and for 2 years, he never got a hearing. This is my disappointment with President Trump over that, is the fact that I hear what President Trump is saying in that we've got to drain that swamp. And I appreciate the fact he nominated somebody that could have done that in Rodney Brown, but how did we go 2 years without having a full farm credit board and having a political blockade? And ultimately, President Trump's nomination passed to President Biden. And in closing, I will say that's why I ultimately, the first lawsuit I had ever filed in my name in my entire life after practicing law all these years was against the President of the United States. I filed suit against President Biden because during the entirety of my investigation, and even now, that the law states there are to be 3 members on that farm credit board, and there is only 1 serving in a legitimate term right now. And so we filed seeking a writ of mandamus for President Biden to make the other 2 appointments, because there's a lot of people out there that need help from this farm credit board. He has made 1 appointment. Believe it or not, it comes from a person that's working under Tom Vilsack in the USDA. So we're not getting any closer to being on the right track there and separating those entities. But what our hope is that we can push things forward on that, get a full board in place, and at least give the farmers an opportunity to have some kind of remedy when they are being wrongfully foreclosed on. But that's what we're fighting for.
You know, I spent a lot of time during a period of my career litigating against the big agricultural interests, against industrial farming, industrial meat production, and all of these companies. I think I probably sued Smithfield and Tyson more than, and Purdue as much as any other lawyer in the country. And we were all over the country litigating against them, all over Canada, Alberta. I even went to Poland to fight Smithfield. But the Farm Bureau was generally supporting Smithfield in this kind of litigation, and they were supporting the big agricultural interests. Not always. There were some state farm bureaus that were very, very strongly aligned with us, but the National Farm Bureau was on the side of corporate agriculture, and the Farmers Union was our ally. And how do you see the Farmers Union? Do they have any power? I haven't been dealing with them for a decade or more. Do they have power, any power in any of the states now?
Yeah, some, I would say, in the Midwest more so. As far as National Farm Bureau dominates, they spend more money lobbying on agriculture than anyone else. And, you look up and down that Senate and House Ag Committee, them and Farm Credit Council both. And you just think about this, Farm Credit Council is in lobbying. We have an entity that was set up for the farmers, but we have created a lobbying branch that is going in and lobbying against the interests of the farmers. But Farmers Union, they've got I would say it's similar to Farm Bureau, to where they have some strongholds in some states, but as far as across the country, I think we're still missing that really strong independent voice that can just tell it exactly like it is on behalf of the family farms. And to do that, you've got to be in a position where you're not compromised. And you're not forced to have to carry the mail for these corporate agricultural entities. And an entity like Farm Bureau, their job is to make money, and that's the duty that they owe. And so it's disingenuous for some of these entities to purport to speak on behalf of the farmers, but they've really got away with it because they have not been challenged. by anybody calling them out for it. But they're not alone in doing that. But corporate agriculture has got them. Corporate agriculture has got our government, and we've got to do something to break that hold.
Dustin Kittle, how can people reach you? How can they support you?
So I'm on X, and we have been getting a great following there. It's just at Dustin Kittle. We started a Save Our Farms campaign that you can find out more there. My lawsuit against President Biden is there as well. And that would be the best way. The reach that we have had on X has been incredible. And I appreciate having that platform for free speech, appreciate being on your show. The more of a light that can be put on this, people that are thinking about this with common sense, they understand it. The story resonates across the country beyond farmers. People are seeing this. They feel at the grocery stores. They see what's going on here. And if we don't do something to support the family farms, we are not far away from having vertical integration across every system. And at that point, they can name their price and they can name their quality. And we've got to be able to keep that from happening. Family farms is really the last bastion of American independence. And so my hope is that there are a lot of people out there that feel strongly about this and can step in and make a difference. It truly is an environmental cause as well. Saving this farmland is important. And you look all the way back at why this system was created. It was created to save the farmland. And that is money in the bank when it comes to society being able to flourish for years to come with a sound food supply and also a sound water supply.
Dustin Kittle, thank you very much for fighting for our democracy, for the family farmer.
Thank you.
For our food supply and against the corruption that is turning our government into just a corporate kleptocracy. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you.
To you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.